Chapter 976. Seeing the two's expressions, Yu Qianqiu knew that he wouldn't be able to get anything out of them. After some hesitation, he handed the 2 pieces of eggshells to Yun Ping. Yun Ping, on the other hand, was a little hesitant. If Yu Qianqiu was an outsider, it wouldn't be a big deal for him to directly snatch it. But because of his relationship with Wei Chuanqiu, if he accepted it, he would owe Yu Qianqiu a big favor. Wei Chuanqiu saw through his hesitation and directly took the things Yu Qianqiu handed over. He slapped them into Yun Peng's hands and smiled. "Why think so much? Don't be polite with this kid. The eggs he's gesturing at are so big, I believe there are more than these 2 pieces. If you don't have enough, then find him." As he said this, he looked at Yu Qianqiu and teased, "You won't be so stingy as to hide them from me, right?" Yu Qianqiu smiled noncommittally. Then he asked curiously, "Since the Phoenix True Blood can help Senior Yun increase his cultivation, I wonder how much these 2 pieces can help you?" Wei Chuanqiu only had a rough idea of this matter. The real inside story was probably only known by those who knew about it. He also looked at Yun Ping curiously. Yun Ping paused, his eyes flashed with a strange light. "I can't say how much I can improve myself. The key is still how much Phoenix True Blood is on the eggshells. Maybe it's mid-stage Immortal Emperor, maybe it's late-stage Immortal Emperor, maybe it's not impossible to step into the God realm. It all depends on my luck." When he said this, Wei Chuanqiu and Yu Qianqiu cried out in unison, "God realm." Then the 2 looked at each other in disbelief. But if he didn't invest now, then when? Yu Qianqiu steeled his heart and immediately took out the dozens of eggshells. He piled them into Yun Peng's arms without hesitation. Yun Peng looked at the pile of eggshells in his arms. His face, which had always been calm, was unusually excited. The word, "thank you," jumped out of his mouth. He really didn't know what else to say. "Well done." Wei Chuanqiu excitedly patted Yu Qianqiu's shoulder with great strength. Immediately Yu Qianqiu grimaced in pain. Wei Chuanqiu immediately apologized and helped him rub it. Yu Qianqiu shook off Yun Peng's claws with one arm and smiled brightly at Yun Peng. "We're a family, so we should help each other. You're treating me like an outsider if you thank me. I've given you all the phoenix eggshells. I hope your cultivation is as high as possible so that we don't have to look at other people's faces." He was also a person who could take and let go. When it was time to make a decision, he would make a decision. There was no need to hesitate. Although the Phoenix True Blood was precious, it didn't have much use for him at the moment. Rather than keeping it to himself, it was better to sell a huge favor. He believed in his own eyes. Although Yun Peng was a man of few words, he was a man of character. Today he had helped Yun Peng with all his might. In the future, when Yun Peng became successful, he would definitely repay him generously. After seeing this scene, Wei Chuanqiu twirled his mustache and looked at Yu Qianqiu with a slight nod. His expression was full of praise. He didn't think that Yu Qianqiu would be so generous as to give such a precious phoenix eggshell to Yun Peng without reservation. However, what surprised him even more was still to come. He saw Yu Qianqiu take out a green bead the size of an egg. With a smile, he held it in his palm and brought it in front of him. "Titan." Yun Peng was startled. He didn't understand what the 2 meant. He was right. It was indeed the Nidan. Moreover, it was the Nidan that Yu Qianqiu had stolen from Wei Chuanqiu. Looking at it now, it would most likely be returned to its original owner. Wei Chuanqiu naturally saw through Yu Qianqiu's intentions. He couldn't help but feel excited. He wasn't in a hurry to receive the item. Instead, he ridiculed, "What's wrong with you today? Could it be that you've found your conscience and are ready to turn over a new leaf? Don't say such useless things. I already said we're all one family. There's no need to say such things." Yu Qianqiu once again emphasized his philosophy of being a good person. He grinned and said, "I say, do you still want it? If you don't, then forget it." He acted as if he wanted to take it back. How could Wei Chuanqiu not want it? He opened his mouth and sucked. The green bead the size of an egg shone with a green light. It drilled into his mouth and went into his stomach. "This is your Nidan? How did you condense a Nidan?" Yun Peng's face was filled with shock. He didn't know that Wei Chuanqiu cultivated the 10,000 Demon Heart Sutra. Wei Chuanqiu glanced at Yu Qianqiu and smiled sheepishly. "Don't ask any more. When the opportunity is ripe, I'll naturally tell you the whole story." Yun Peng looked at Yu Qianqiu again. He couldn't figure out how Wei Chuanqiu's Nidan ended up in Yu Qianqiu's hands. Seeing that Yun Peng still had a puzzled look, Wei Chuanqiu patted Yu Qianqiu's shoulder and changed the topic. Kid, your luck is a little too good. You can even pick up a phoenix egg? Maybe it's because my luck is good. Seeing that his exaggerated words caused the two to roll their eyes at him, Xianxia immediately changed his words and sighed, "Luck my ass. Logically speaking, I picked up this egg and hatched it with my own hands. This little phoenix should be close to me. But it's strange. This little bastard is like an enemy to me. Instead, he's as close as a sister to Shui. So heartless." This might be the problem of your character that you were talking about. Wei Chuanqiu patted his shoulder and used his words to stop him. In the end, Xianxia rolled his eyes and said, "Heartless. Speaking of that phoenix chick." After putting away the eggshell, Yunpeng pondered for a while and said, "Although there are probably only a few people in the immortal world who have seen a phoenix, we still have to be careful. It's best to make it appear less often. Otherwise it might cause big trouble." Hearing that, Wei Chuanqiu's playful expression also froze and became somewhat serious. Xianxia looked at the two of them suspiciously and asked, "Why?" "Because the phoenix's descent means that the world is about to be in chaos," Wei Chuanqiu said in a deep voice. "There is such a saying." Yunpeng nodded and said, "Legend has it that a phoenix appeared 100,000 years ago. At the same time, it also brought with it a star orb that is said to be able to make people become gods. In the end, it caused a fierce battle between Jin Tai Bai Qi and the demon lord of 10,000 swords. That battle caused chaos in the three realms. Isn't this the sign that the phoenix's descent will cause the world to be in chaos? Although I don't know if it's a coincidence or if it's true, once others know that another phoenix has descended, the consequences can be imagined. Especially Jin Tai, I'm afraid he won't sit by and do nothing. So it's better to keep this matter a secret." He had always been a man of few words. Today he was able to say so many words of advice to Xianxia in one breath. It was obvious that he sincerely regarded Xianxia as one of his own. It was clear that Xianxia's generous act of buying people's hearts was effective. "I understand. I'll go and tell them now so that they don't cause any unnecessary trouble." Xianxia turned and left with a solemn face. He naturally understood the seriousness of this matter. In the holy land of Baiwan nation's Wen family, in the forbidden area where Wen Lanfeng usually cultivated, Yan Zhuixing knelt on the ground, opened his arms and looked up to the sky. His expression was frighteningly distorted, and his nails had sunk deep into his palms. The blue veins on his forehead and neck were bulging ferociously. His eyes were bloodshot and his face was flushed red. He knelt on the ground and shouted silently at the top of his lungs. After maintaining this state for a long time, he suddenly roared angrily, "Xianxia!" The continuous roar reverberated in the forbidden area. Fortunately, Wen Rui, who was standing respectfully at the side, had already set up a soundproof barrier. Otherwise, this roar would have alarmed everyone in the holy land of Wen family. Yan Zhuixing roared until there was no sound. Then he hugged his head with his arms and fell to the ground. He curled up and panted heavily. His eyes were red as if he was a beast that wanted to eat a human. After being seriously injured by Xianxia last time, he hid in the Baiwan nation's imperial palace to recuperate. In order to maintain the smooth flow of information to the cultivation world, he set his eyes on Wen Lanfeng in the holy land of Wen family because he was confident that he could control Wen Lanfeng with his current cultivation. In the end, after sneaking into the holy land of Wen family with Shouchen's appearance, he did not find Wen Lanfeng after searching inside and outside. Instead he found Wen Rui, who had been out of contact for a long time, and found that the other had broken free from the control of his demon eye. Wen Rui did not know Shouchen and was once again controlled by Yan Zhuixing due to carelessness. After asking, Yan Zhuixing found out that Xianxia already had a panacea in his hands to remove the control of his demon eye. Wen Lanfeng asked for a panacea to remove Wen Rui's control. After asking about Wen Lanfeng's whereabouts, he found out that Wen Lanfeng had long been summoned by Xianxia and had not returned. As for where he went, Wen Rui did not know due to Wen Lanfeng's secrecy. Since he'd taken control of Wen Rui once more, he couldn't avoid inquiring about the Myriad Devil Palace and Flower Palace. He'd more or less sensed that with Xianxia's ruthlessness, Xianxia would probably not let the Myriad Devil Palace and Flower Palace off. The result was not much different from what he had expected. Xianxia personally went to the Flower Palace to settle the score. Fortunately, Ma Jiugu of Fuxian Island arrived in time, and his mother and sister escaped. However, they were forced to leave the Flower Palace where they had lived for many years and fled to Fuxian Island. As for the Palace of 10,000 Demons, as expected, it had been completely razed to the ground. Xianxia had erased it from the face of the cultivation world. What made him most miserable was that his grandfather and father were forced to commit suicide in public to beg Xianxia to let the rest of the 10,000 demons go. In the end, after his grandfather and father shed their blood, Xianxia still killed the rest. The senior brothers left by Bingqingzi also died together, and Xianxia did not let any of them go. At the thought of his grandfather and father being forced to commit suicide, Yan Zhuixing was in so much pain that he almost collapsed. He hated Xianxia, but he hated himself even more. He hated himself for being overconfident and not listening to his grandfather's advice. He hated himself for not knowing that there was always someone better out there. As a result, this disaster was brought upon him, and his family was forced to either die or escape. He fell to the ground with his head in his hands and quietly curled up. After a day and a night, he regained his indifference and slowly woke up from the ground. He gradually got up and walked out step by step. When Rui followed him respectfully. After a few steps, he saw Yan Zhuixing suddenly turn around and stare at him indifferently. "You don't need to follow me anymore. Just hide here and do what you should do. I hope I have a chance to summon you in the future." After saying that, he turned around and walked out with a resolute expression. When Rui respectfully saluted behind him and said, "This subordinate is always at master's command." Chapter 977. In Wenqing Palace, little Yan Yun's laughter continued. The demonic blade grew bigger and was swaying in the air while carrying him. Little Yan Yun shouted from time to time, "Father, shake it faster, shake it faster." Yan Zhuixing crossed his arms and looked at him with a doting expression. The hipster sat on the steps in the house with a blissful expression. Her knees were cushioned by a piece of white silk that was stretched tight with a bamboo strip. She was embroidering a butterfly that was about to fly. One of the pairs of butterflies had been embroidered, and the other one was almost done as well. It would be completed with just 2 tentacles. The hipster who was immersed in her embroidery would look up at the father and son from time to time. She would shake her head and smile warmly before continuing to embroider. She had completely shed the image of an unruly princess and was now a good wife and loving mother. Some people said that a good wife and loving mother was not born naturally. Most of them were formed after time. It was probably referring to women like her. She liked her current life very much and was very satisfied with it. The exciting cultivation world that Yan Zhuixing told her about was not tempting to her at all because it was too far away from her. She did not have too many desires and only hoped that her family could live peacefully like this. "Father, I want to ride a horse." Little Yan Yun, who was riding on the demonic blade, suddenly shouted. Yan Zhuixing nodded amiably. The demonic blade flipped over and little Yan Yun landed in his father's arms with a cheer. The demonic blade also quickly shrunk and flashed into Yan Zhuixing's storage bag. Yan Zhuixing put down his son and knelt down on all fours. Little Yan Yun immediately climbed onto his back and sat on it, hitting Yan Zhuixing's butt with the back of his hand and shouting, "Giddy, giddy, giddy." Yan Zhuixing immediately smiled and quickly got up from the ground. Who would have thought that the great devil that shocked the cultivation world would do something like this? When the hipster saw this, her face immediately changed and she shouted, "Yan Yun, don't treat your father like this. Get down now." Yan Yun pouted. Yan Zhuixing immediately turned around and smiled at the hipster. "It's okay. If the kid wants to play with him." However, perhaps Yan Yun realized his mistake or was afraid of his mother who was fierce in appearance. He immediately slid down from Yan Zhuixing's back. "Why are you unhappy?" Yan Zhuixing raised his hand and scratched little Yan Yun's nose. Then he carried him and sat beside hipster. When Qing glared at the father and son pair, then continued to bury her head in embroidering her butterfly. Seeing that his son was still looking away with a straight face, Yan Zhuixing immediately turned his little head over and frowned. "Yun, don't be angry with your mother. Remember, when you grow up you have to take good care of your mother or I will be unhappy." Yan Yun pouted and said, "Don't I have father to take care of me?" His words obviously still remembered the hatred of when Qing scolding him. He completely had the temperament of a child. "If father goes far away, can't you help father take care of mother?" As soon as Yan Zhuixing's words came out, when Qing beside him trembled and suddenly turned to look at him. After the expression on her face changed for a while, she didn't see any other meaning from Yan Zhuixing. It seemed that he was just educating a child. She then lowered her head and continued to embroider her butterfly, but the stitches were messy. It seemed that she was a little absent-minded and worried about something. Then I will take care of mother, but father, don't go too far away. Come back soon. Yan Yun threw himself on him and said while hugging his neck. Yan Zhuixing smiled and replied with an N. He gently patted his back and asked, if father goes far away, will you miss father? Wen Qing suddenly bit her lips while Yan Zhuixing glanced at her slightly. Yes. Why? Yan Yun propped himself up and looked at Yan Zhuixing righteously. He said, because father is the most powerful person in the world. I will think that father will teach me to be the most powerful person in the world when he comes back. The most powerful person in the world. The scene of Yu Qianchou severely injuring him and causing him to flee appeared in Yan Zhuixing's mind, but he still said, okay. It's a deal. He held his son in his arms again and looked outside the palace with a resolute gaze. He thought to himself, father won't let you down. When father comes back, you will see the most powerful father in the world. I will also train you to become the most powerful person in the world. After all, a child's physical strength and energy were limited. After playing for a while, he soon fell asleep on Yan Zhuixing's shoulder. Yan Zhuixing gently carried him into the room and settled him down. Then he came out and sat beside Wen Qing. He looked at Wen Qing, who was embroidering and had a lot of thoughts. Finally finished. Wen Qing heaved a sigh of relief and pulled Yan Zhuixing's thoughts back to reality. She said with a smile, let me see how good Madame's craftsmanship is. When he took the embroidery from Wen Qing's hand, his nose slightly twitched and he smelled a little blood. He glanced at Wen Qing's hand and saw a few small needle marks on her left index finger. Obviously, she was pricked by an embroidery needle. In fact, the embroidery needle was not sharp. It could be seen how absent-minded she was to be able to prick her finger. Yan Zhuixing looked at the embroidery carefully. There were 2 pairs of butterflies hovering on a big auspicious red peony flower. There were a few spots of blood beside the peony flower. Obviously, it was left by the embroidery needle when it pricked her hand. It's really beautiful. I can almost smell the fragrance of the peony flower. And these 2 butterflies are almost alive. I didn't expect the dignified Baiwan Kingdom's princess to have such craftsmanship. Yan Zhuixing glanced at Wen Qing, who was stunned at the side, and pointed at the tentacle of a butterfly. He shook his head and said, but the stitches here are obviously not tight enough. It's a little messy. Little Qing, are you thinking of something? Wen Qing came back to her senses and stared at him. She bit her lip and said, are you leaving again? Yan Zhuixing smiled and exerted force in his hand. The round bamboo strip with the white silk immediately shattered into dust. He shook the embroidery, folded it and put it into his storage bag. He said with a smile, I want to keep this embroidery with me. Whenever I see it, I will think of you and Yun. The meaning in his words was very obvious. He had already indirectly answered Wen Qing's question. In fact, the conversation he had with his son before was to let her be mentally prepared. Can you not leave me and Yun'er behind? Stop fighting and killing. Can't you just stay with us, mother and son, for the rest of our lives? Hipster suddenly knelt down in front of him, hugging his leg as she pleaded. However, Yan Zhuixing's indifferent expression as he looked outside the palace made her unable to continue pestering him. She could only take a step back and squeeze out a forced smile. Then how long will you be gone this time? When will you be back? Yan Zhuixing turned around and reached out to caress her cheek. He said with a smile, the reason I'm leaving this time is so that one day our family can live together forever. I have already forged a demonic body and can live forever. Yun-er also has the aptitude for cultivation, so he can at least live for a long time. However, how can I bear to see you grow old alone? The image of her white hair while her husband and son were still young appeared in Wen Qing's mind. She couldn't help but shudder and didn't know what to do for a moment. When she woke up from her daze, she realized that she had already been carried by Yan Zhuixing to the bed in the inner room. Needless to say, it was another flood of erotic light. After their indulgence, the 2 of them hugged each other naked. Yan Zhuixing caressed her smooth body and sighed, you don't have to worry about Yun'er's future. I have already made arrangements in secret. When he grows up and starts to understand, there will naturally be people who will teach him what to do. Could it be that you are so heartless to abandon us and leave on your own? Wen Qing sobbed as she lay on his chest. Father's vengeance is absolutely irreconcilable. Besides, there's still grandfather, master and a group of senior brothers. As long as a man is courageous, how can he endure humiliation to live? Yan Zhuixing slowly told Wenqing the information he had obtained from Wenrui in detail, so that she could understand the deep hatred she had to bear. It's Yu Qianchou again. Why does he always make life difficult for you? Wenqing was gnashing her teeth in hatred. You are still young, only in your 20s. You still have many days to live. If there is still no news of me after 10 years, then don't wait for me. Change, find a good man and remarry. I don't blame you. After Yan Zhuixing said this, he ignored Wenqing's crazy sobs and directly pushed her to the side. He got off the bed naked. He walked to the center of the spacious room barefoot. He raised his hand and the devil blade flashed into his hand from the storage bag on the floor. He grabbed the devil blade with his right hand and fiercely slashed the palm of his left hand. He clenched his left hand into a fist and fresh blood immediately dripped onto the bright and clean floor. Blood splattered everywhere and not long after, there was a large pool of bright red and dazzling blood on the floor. What are you doing? Wenqing on the bed cried out in alarm. She jumped off the bed in a panic and hugged him. Yan Zhuixing suddenly turned around and stared at her coldly. Did I waste my words just now? Go back to the bed and don't ruin my plans. With a wave of his hand, Yan Zhuixing lightly threw her back to the bed and cried. When the blood on the floor had almost accumulated, Yan Zhuixing suddenly opened his bloody fist. Black killing intent immediately enveloped the bright red wound on his palm. The wound became smaller and smaller and soon there was no scar at all. It was truly miraculous. Wenqing was dumbfounded. Only then did she know that he wasn't harming himself. There was indeed an important matter. Then she saw him put his hands together and holding the devil blade in between his palms while muttering to himself. No one knew what he was chanting. When the devil blade in his palm started to shine with a faint red light, he single-handedly grabbed a corner of the devil blade and twisted it like a spinning top. The devil blade that was emitting a faint red light suddenly spun in the air like a red ball of light. It lightly floated down to the pool of blood on the floor and began to spin. The pool of blood on the floor also suddenly emitted a faint red light, shining dimly and dimly. On the obedient island of the demon domain, a strong wind suddenly rose in the surroundings, whistling incessantly as if it was going to blow the house away. Lady Mu, who was sitting cross-legged in the house, suddenly opened her eyes and teleported to the side of the 1,000-mile lake. The wind was abnormally strong, causing her white dress to flutter. She couldn't help but look around strangely. One must know that the obedient island had always been sunny. Apart from man-made factors, there had never been such a strong wind. Chapter 978. However, the strong wind was only a prelude. After a while, dark clouds began to gather in the surrounding sky. The clear sky above the 1,000-mile lake was rapidly compressed by the dark clouds, shrinking at a visible speed. The demons and ghosts around the 1,000-mile lake all looked in the direction of the lake in bewilderment, not knowing if something big was going to happen. Lady Mu had lived in the demon ghost domain for many years, but she had never heard of such an abnormal phenomenon above the 1,000-mile lake. For a moment she looked around in surprise. All of a sudden, the rippling lake water around the obedient island became completely still. Not only the surroundings but even as far as the eye could see, the entire lake had become deathly still. Not even the wind could move it, causing one's heart to sink. Lady Mu quickly released her divine sense to scan the lake water around Obedient Island. As a result, she found that the fish in the water were fleeing in terror, as if something terrible was about to happen. With so many abnormal phenomena gathered together, Lady Mu did not dare to hesitate and quickly took out a silver ball. Yu Qianchou had told her that if there was anything abnormal in the demon ghost domain, she should immediately report to him. Moreover, it was such a strange phenomenon, so she did not dare to delay. Otherwise, if something happened, she, a small tree demon, could not bear the consequences. Regarding the affairs of the demon ghost domain, although Yu Qianchou was a hands-off manager, once something really happened he would immediately take the top priority to deal with it. After all, the demon ghost domain was the foundation of the demon ghost Immortal exterminating formation, the strongest line of defense against the strong enemies of the outside world. After receiving Lady Mu's call, Yu Qianchou immediately put down everything he was doing and appeared on Obedient Island. However, as soon as he appeared, he was caught unprepared by the strong wind around him. He thought that he had gone to the wrong place and then he realized that he had been ambushed. Purple flames quickly covered his body and at the same time he held the divine sword in his hand, intending to kill all the enemies who dared to ambush him. After quickly seeing the situation around him, he was slightly relieved. He immediately turned around and shouted angrily, "Lady Mu, what's going on?" Lady Mu was shocked by his powerful entrance with the divine sword in his hand and purple flames. His sharp and threatening murderous aura especially scared her so much that she was trembling with fear. Faced with the scolding, Madame Mu hurriedly bowed and said, "Mister, I don't know what's going on either. This abnormality happened just now. This little demon couldn't figure out the situation and didn't dare to delay, so she immediately summoned Mister to keep watch." Xianxia narrowed his eyes and stared sharply at Lady Mu's face. Seeing that she did not seem to be lying, he quickly retracted the purple flames and the divine sword. His robes fluttered in the wind. He then looked up into the sky and saw that the last ray of light had been completely annihilated by the dark clouds. From the looks of it, it was not far from Obedient Island. In the blink of an eye, the sound of the wind became even stronger, and the world became so dark that one could not even see their own fingers. There was a crackling sound of thunder in the sky, and bolts of lightning crisscrossed in the sky, illuminating Lady Mu's slightly frightened face. Ever since she grew up in the demon domain, she had never seen such a situation in the demon domain. Lady Mu looked at Xianxia with a panicked gaze. From time to time, bolts of lightning crisscrossed and flashed, illuminating Xianxia, who was standing with his hands clasped behind his back. Xianxia's expression was cold and emotionless. His eyes quickly swept around like an owl, and no one knew what he was thinking under his cold face. As the sky darkened and the thunder grew louder, a bright moon was held up by Xianxia, illuminating the surroundings with a vast expanse of whiteness. After the dazzling white light faded a little, the heaven's eye mirror showed the scene of a certain place in the demon domain. It was the entrance of the 9th netherworld cave. However, compared to the changes in the sky, the 9th netherworld cave was the same as usual. There was no abnormal phenomenon, eliminating the possibility of someone coming out of the netherworld. Then the scene in the heaven's eye mirror quickly changed, scanning the entire demon domain at an extremely fast speed. Nothing could escape Xianxia's eyes. However, the strange thing was that after using the heaven's eye mirror to inspect the entire demon domain, he found that other places were the same as usual. There was no change except for the sky above the 1,000-mile lake, which was shrouded by the inexplicable dark clouds. Thinking of the position where the last ball of light had disappeared in the sky, Xianxia's eyes fell directly on the position corresponding to the surface of the lake. Lady Mu didn't know what he had found, so she also looked in that direction. Almost at the same time, the deathly still surface of the 1,000-mile lake gradually began to ripple. To be exact, the lake water began to swirl. At the position they were looking at, with that place as the center, a whirlpool gradually appeared. Boom! A thunderbolt fell from the sky and directly struck the center of the whirlpool. Then, boom, boom, boom. A series of dazzling greenish-white thunderbolts struck the center of the whirlpool. The scene was extremely strange. Lady Mu secretly glanced at Xianxia, thinking that he might have found something since he had looked at that position in advance. Xianxia frowned. There was no mention of such a thing in the past torturer's history. What was going on? Could it be that there was... Xianxia's twinkling eyes paused. His pupils suddenly shrank as he stared at the center of the whirlpool. He remembered that below that position was probably the sealed entrance to the demonic realm. Last time he had dived down to check and it was almost in that position. Could it be that the entrance to the demonic realm was about to open? Xianxia was shocked when he thought of this. If the demonic realm opened, all the demons and ghosts of the demonic realm would come out one after another. How could he resist them alone? In an instant, all kinds of thoughts flashed through his mind. If that was really the case, he could activate the demonic ghost Immortal punishing formation, and summon Yunpeng and Wei Chunqiu to help. Even if the heroic army turned out in full strength and all the cultivators in the human world resisted with all their might, they probably wouldn't be able to resist the numerous heroes of the demonic realm. That was the strongest force in the 3 realms that had once suppressed the immortal and netherworld realms. Moreover, if the situation became critical, the cultivators in the human world might not be willing to stand firmly on his side. If only Master Bai Changchun was here. As the whirlpool gradually expanded, the lake water surged layer by layer. It wouldn't be long before it was level with the land of Shuntian Island. When Xianxia thought of how the demonic ghost domain had been awe-inspiring in the human world for so long, but now it was going to be destroyed in the hands of his generation, he felt indignant. After a moment of malevolence, he suddenly condensed his 5 claws and stretched them towards the whirlpool in the lake. Under the illumination of the flashing lightning, snow-white frost rapidly spread across the surface of the lake with a jaded sound. In a short while, the huge area of the lake with the whirlpool as the center was frozen into a block. A whirlpool that was estimated to be 100 meters in diameter and dozens of meters deep was inlaid in the frozen lake. But it only paused for a few moments. A few bolts of lightning struck down and immediately smashed it into pieces. The lake water below stirred the ice and began to rotate again. Xianxia's 5 fingers moved again and immediately froze the whirlpool. However, a few more bolts of lightning fell from the dark clouds and easily shattered the frozen whirlpool. Xianxia didn't give in at all. He froze the whirlpool and the lightning in the dark clouds split apart. The two sides were in a stalemate. Realizing that this stalemate wasn't a solution, Xianxia's expression turned cold. After sealing the whirlpool, he didn't wait for the lightning in the sky to strike again. He flipped his 5 claws and clenched them into a fist. A ball of purple flames appeared in his palm. He raised it towards the sky and angrily shouted, "Scram!" The malevolent lightning in the sky immediately turned into weak arcs of lightning, faintly discernible in the dark clouds. As the thunder gradually died down, the arcs of lightning also gradually disappeared. As soon as Xianxia exerted force with the purple flames, he immediately felt that there was a mysterious force controlling the dark clouds in the sky. However, that force wasn't strong enough to resist the energy of heaven and earth that he controlled with the purple flames. Soon, the dark clouds in the sky seemed to have been punched through by his fist. They quickly melted and dispersed into the sky. Not long after, the sky above the 1,000-mile lake returned to blue skies and white clouds. However, the surface of the lake in front of him was now covered with a huge layer of crystal-clear ice. Lady Mu looked at Xianxia with lingering fear in her heart. She could feel the enormous energy under the pressure of heaven and earth just now. However, when Xianxia punched towards the sky, an even more enormous energy appeared. After he shouted angrily, "Scram!" the enormous energy that appeared later immediately crushed and assimilated the energy that the former had condensed. She couldn't imagine how high Xianxia's cultivation was. He was actually able to resist the power of heaven and earth. No wonder he was the torture envoy of the demon ghost region. The look in Lady Mu's eyes became more and more respectful. The power of the torture envoy was not something that she could resist. At this moment she just wanted to do her part honestly. Xianxia wasn't in the mood to care about what she thought. He put away the purple flames and put down his raised fist. The scene in the Heaven's Eye mirror, in his other hand, once again swept across the entire demon ghost region. Xianxia's eyes were like an eagle's as he stared at the scene that flashed by quickly in the mirror. He refused to let go of the slightest suspicion. He concluded that the abnormality just now was definitely not a natural phenomenon. It had to be controlled by someone. Someone was actually targeting the demon ghost region, and it was targeting the sealed entrance to the demon realm. Currently, there were many people in the human world who had the ability and the need to do so. The first thought that came to Xianxia's mind was Yan Zhuixing. Except for Yan Zhuixing, who practiced the devil skill, he couldn't think of anyone else in the human world who wanted to get in touch with the demon realm. His judgment was that Yan Zhuixing had been repeatedly defeated by him. After the last battle, Yan Zhuixing knew that there was a huge gap between their strength, so he targeted the demon realm. He was afraid that the demon realm would ask for reinforcements to deal with him. He couldn't let Yan Zhuixing succeed. For a moment, Xianxia was full of murderous intent and became much more vigilant. In the Wenqing Palace of Baiwan country, Yan Zhuixing, who was standing naked, was shocked. He took a few steps back and spat out a mouthful of blood. He had just performed the great method of Devil God to find the exact entrance to the demon realm, but it was inexplicably and forcibly interrupted. Immediately he was backfired by the great method and harmed himself. The hipster cried out in alarm and ran off the bed naked to help him up, but he waved his arm to shake her off. Yan Zhuixing took a few steps forward and knelt in front of the hideous pool of blood, laughing wildly. "The entrance to the demon realm, the entrance to the demon realm, I found it, I finally found it." Chapter 979. After a burst of ecstasy, Yan Zhuixing knelt in front of the pool of blood and cried again. No one knew what sad thing he was thinking of. The hipster, who was pushed to the ground by him, supported his body with some pain. Obviously he was hurt by the fall. Looking at Yan Zhuixing, who was crying, her expression was very complicated. Then her eyes fell on the ground in front of him that had condensed into a dark red color. On the ground the blood had solidified. After the demonic blade rotated for a while, it left a strange picture. If one looked carefully, they would find that it was a macroscopic map of mountains and rivers. The demonic blade that had stopped rotating stood quietly in a certain position. There was a faint red light constantly flashing in that position. After crying for a while, Yan Zhuixing laughed wildly again. No one knew whether he was happy or sad. He straightened up, wiped his tears, pulled out the demonic blade, and knelt in front of the dark red geographical map of mountains and rivers to look at it carefully. However, when he saw the position of the demonic blade just now, the ecstatic expression on his face froze. He sat on the ground and muttered to himself with dull eyes, "The demon realm, it's actually the demon realm. The entrance to the demon realm is actually in the demon realm controlled by Xianxia." This was a huge blow to him. He had finally found the entrance to the demon realm, but he found that it was in Xianxia's territory. Now that he was afraid of Xianxia, if he asked him to go to the demon ghost domain, what was the difference between that and asking him to die? The most helpless thing was that the demon realm had always been mysterious to the entire cultivation world. He didn't know the specific situation in the demon realm at all, so he didn't dare to take risks. He was afraid that he would be discovered as soon as he broke into the demon realm. The room was silent for a long time, and then there was the rustling sound of the hipster's clothes. The hipster picked up Yan Zhuixing's clothes on the ground, walked gently to Yan Zhuixing's side, knelt down and said softly, "Put on your clothes first." Then she took Yan Zhuixing's arm hard, helped him up and quietly helped him put on his clothes. After she was dressed, she hugged his waist from behind and said softly against his back, "Listen to me. If it's too dangerous, it's better not to go. Isn't it good for our family to be safe and sound together?" Yan Zhuixing came back to his senses and sighed softly. He gently pulled away the soft hands on his abdomen and turned around to hold Hipster's shoulders. He shook his head and smiled bitterly. "One wrong step leads to many wrong steps. Now it's not about whether I want to let go or not, but Xianxia won't let me go at all. As long as I stay here for another day, there's a chance that I'll give myself away and you and your son will be in danger for another day. With his current power and influence, if he wanted to kill me, it would only be a matter of time before he found me. I know his nature all too well. That guy is vicious and merciless. Once he finds out about my relationship with you and your mother, I'm afraid that not only will he not let me off, he will also not let you and your mother off. Therefore I must leave. For you and Yun, or even if I have to divert his attention." Hipster shook her head in grief and indignation. "Is there no one in this world who can control him? Are we just going to let him do whatever he wants in this world? No. No one in this world can be his opponent." Yan Zhuixing shook his head with certainty and said, "It's a pity that there's no place for me in the human world. Otherwise, if I have time to cultivate the demonic skill, Xianxia won't be my opponent. It's not that I don't have a chance, but I've missed it. Now he won't give me any more chances. He won't stop until he kills me." Hipster suddenly burst into tears. Yan Zhuixing gently pushed her away, turned around and waved his hand toward the ground. The blood on the ground immediately turned into ashes. Then he said, "I should go. Take care of yourself and Yun." Black spirits emitted from all over his body, and in the blink of an eye he turned back into Zhou Xian. His body turned into a shadow and flashed away. After flying out of the green wenching palace, he could still hear Hipster's cries. He took a deep breath and quickly flew toward the region of demons. Just as he said to Hipster, with Xianxia's monstrous power, it was only a matter of time before Xianxia found him. There was no longer a place for him in this world and he had no way out. The only way was to find a way to hide in the demon world, to cultivate and come out for revenge when the time was right. If it was really impossible, he didn't mind opening the passage to the demon world completely and letting the demons of the demon world out to wreak havoc in the human world. Of course, for Hipster and Yan Yun as well as his mother and sister, he wouldn't do that until the last moment. However, he didn't go to the demon ghost region without any help. The only thing he could rely on was his changed appearance. He hoped to get close to the entrance to the demon world by deceiving people. It could be said that he spent a lot of time going to the demon ghost region, mainly because he wasted time on the journey. Avoiding the cultivators of the cultivation world was one reason. More importantly, he didn't dare to fly too fast and expose his cultivation. In order to avoid the search of various forces, he took a lot of detours. When he arrived at the demon ghost region, it was already a few days later. As soon as he entered the territory of the demon ghost region, he began to tremble with fear. He had long heard that the demon ghost region was full of demons and ghosts. He was afraid that the slightest movement would alarm Xianxia. He was very careful along the way. He was gambling and he had to take the risk. Of course, he still had a way out. Once he met Xianxia, he would use the blood escape to escape. However, the strange thing was that the entire demon ghost region was terrifyingly quiet. There was no sound at all. He flew stealthily all the way. Although he saw a lot of demons and ghosts, none of them discovered him. After half a day, there was no accident or trouble at all. This made him feel a little guilty. He even thought of turning back and escaping. However, in the end he made up his mind and decided to gamble. Maybe Xianxia wasn't in the demon ghost region. Moreover, how could he not take risks when he wanted to achieve great things? He didn't know that Xianxia had already ordered the entire demon ghost region to monitor all suspicious people who broke into the demon ghost region. From the moment Zhou Xian stepped into the demon ghost region, he was already discovered by a tree demon. This was because Zhou Xian happened to hide in the bushes where he was for a while. Perhaps he thought that the trees were dense and suitable for hiding. However, the tree demon didn't alarm him. After he went far away, it quickly sent the news to the local demon king. The demon king also sent the news to Obedient Island as fast as possible. Humph! You're as adventurous as me. You still came after all. There was a way to heaven but you didn't take it. There's no door to hell but you still came. Let's see where you can escape this time. Xianxia sneered. He had been guarding Obedient Island for a few days. As soon as he received the news, the Heaven Eye mirror, which was already scanning around, immediately locked on to the person who came. Looking at the stranger floating in front of him in the Heaven Eye mirror, Xianxia already determined that he was the incarnation of Zhou Xian. Ordinary people wouldn't dare to run to the demon ghost region. Moreover, the direction he came from was Obedient Island of the 1,000-mile lake. Xianxia didn't rush to kill him. Instead, he quietly waited for Zhou Xian's arrival. Zhou Xian had escaped twice with the blood escape technique, which had taught him a lesson. The blood escape technique of the demonic technique was too strange. Once he escaped, he wouldn't even know where the opponent was going. Therefore, he wasn't in a hurry to kill him. He wanted to let Zhou Xian come in. He wanted to see if Zhou Xian could escape from the central region of the demon ghost domain. Given how vast the demon ghost domain was, once he used the blood escape he would be able to escape. If he couldn't, as long as he was still in the demon ghost region, his eyes and ears would be able to find him. He didn't believe that Zhou Xian had so many broken limbs to use the blood escape technique. Staring at the sneaky guy in the Heaven Eye mirror, Xianxia's lips curled into a sinister smile. In fact, he was somewhat certain that with Zhou Xian's current cultivation, using the blood escape technique wouldn't be enough to escape from the vast demon ghost region. Therefore, he cast a large net and prepared to wait for the rabbit. With Zhou Xian's current cultivation, it would take him less than a day to fly to Obedient Island at his fastest speed. However, it took him several days to stealthily approach the edge of the 1,000-mile lake. Along the way he felt that the region was too deep. If an accident happened, he wouldn't be able to escape from the demon ghost region in one go. In the midst of hesitation he even wanted to retreat. His actions almost caused Xianxia to chase after him. However, after careful consideration, Zhou Xian felt that it shouldn't be a problem for him to escape. He hadn't been discovered until now. Even if he couldn't escape with the blood escape technique, he was confident that he could hide. This judgment was established on the basis that he was certain that he hadn't been discovered. Based on his understanding of Xianxia, if Xianxia had really discovered him, he would definitely rush over to kill him. How could he have waited until now? His judgment was correct. If Xianxia had suddenly discovered him, then he would definitely have chased after him without a second word, just as he had expected. However, what he didn't know was that when he used the great demon god technique to find the entrance to the demon world, he had caused too much of a commotion. This made Xianxia understand his purpose of coming, so he planned to wait for him to walk into the trap. Therefore, some things were predestined. Seeing that he had returned, Xianxia heaved a sigh of relief and cursed in his heart. Yan Zhuixing hid by the side of the 1,000-mile lake for a long time. He silently recalled the location of the entrance to the demon world, then quietly dove into the 1,000-mile lake. After observing his surroundings in the water, he found that the fish were swimming leisurely. Feeling that there shouldn't be any danger, he held the demon blade in his hand and unhurriedly dashed in the direction he remembered. Damn, this guy is really careful. Yu Qianzhou looked at the figure disappearing into the 1,000-mile lake through the Heaven's Eye mirror and cursed. The Heaven's Eye mirror was good, but it couldn't see into the soil and water. Once Yan Zhuixing dove into the water, he could only see the vast 1,000-mile lake but not the situation underwater. This was somewhat unexpected. After putting away the Heaven's Eye mirror, Yu Qianzhou, who was standing by the side of the lake, directly dove into the lake. Chapter 980. As he dived deeper and deeper, the azure blue waves slowly turned dark, and the water became colder and colder. His current cultivation was much higher than before, and with the help of his water arts, the huge pressure of the lake was no longer able to stop him from diving deeper. His vision gradually turned pitch black, and he could hear the sound of his body shuttling through the water. Not long after, a faint white light appeared at the bottom of the quiet lake. With his previous experience, Yu Qianzhou was not surprised at all and quickly scuttled over. A white jade-like barrier of light hung at the bottom of the lake, illuminating the surroundings as if it was daytime. One could vaguely see the underwater mountain range, especially the pillar that rose up to the surface of the lake, the peak of which was the Obedient Island. The strange deep-water fish that were leisurely swimming in the surroundings suddenly fled in fright from the sudden appearance of a human figure. Yu Qianzhou descended on the light barrier and used all of his power to press down on it. As expected, he found that the defense set up by the 10,000 Swords Demon Monarch was not easy to destroy. He then relaxed and quickly checked the surroundings of the light barrier, memorizing the general terrain in his mind. After identifying the direction Yan Zhuixing came from, he lightly landed behind a rock at the bottom of the lake. He took out a silver-white straw cape and put it on. After shaking it a bit, the cape flashed with white light and he disappeared at the bottom of the lake. This straw cape was the spoils of war from the battle with the 4 island sect masters at the mystic Immortal City's life and death mound. Its function was to hide underwater, and even spiritual sense could not detect it. It was a good item for hiding underwater. Yu Qianzhou, who was hiding behind the rock, gently took out his divine sword. This time he had made up his mind to deal a fatal blow to Yan Zhuixing. He definitely could not let him escape. As for whether killing Yan Zhuixing would attract the demon god behind him to deal with him, he was no longer as apprehensive as before. Judging from the cause and effect, he believed that the demon god should have some misgivings in the deity realm. If he could directly intervene and help Yan Zhuixing, he would be the one hiding everywhere and not Yan Zhuixing. Time passed bit by bit. The sun, moon, and stars could not be seen in the world under the lake. Who knew how much time had passed? Yu Qianzhou's patience did not go to waste. After the distant deep-water fishes fled in panic, he immediately became spirited, knowing that what should come had come. Hence he poked his head out from behind the rock to look around. He wasn't worried that the other party would discover him anyway. Under the illumination of the light shield, the magic blade, which was more than 10 meters long, shone with a faint cold light. It stood upright at the bottom of the water and opened a path, giving off the feeling of a sailboat or the dorsal fin of a shark. Yan Zhuixing stood in the inner arc of the magic blade, holding the back of the blade with one hand, carefully observing his surroundings. He stopped about 200 meters away from the light barrier and looked at the transparent white light barrier in front of him with an expression of ecstasy. He had been on tenterhooks along the way and had finally arrived at his destination. However, he did not let his happiness get to his head. Instead, he calmed down and scanned his surroundings. He was not in a hurry to get close to the light barrier. Instead, he steered the magic blade around slowly. Damn it. Cowardly bandit, you are already here, what's the use of being careful? The invisible Yu Qianzhou cursed in his heart. However, he was not worried. At this point, even if Yan Zhuixing found something suspicious, he believed that he would risk his life. Even if he wanted to escape, it was too late. However, he did not want any accidents to happen. After all, it was still unknown whether the other party could escape the range of the demon domain in one go with the blood escape. He still had to wait for the right opportunity to deal a fatal blow. Yan Zhuixing, who was carefully searching around, used his eyes and divine sense to look around. After confirming that there was no problem, he circled around and returned to his original place. There was an excited expression on his face. The magic blade shrank and returned to his hand. He boldly rushed to the front of the light barrier, touched the light barrier with his hand, and looked through the light barrier to see the situation inside. Inside the light barrier was a pile of ferocious stone forest. In the middle there was an ancient cave door that looked like a cave. There was no door at the entrance, but a piece of iron covered with all kinds of strange runes sealed the entire cave entrance. This should be the masterpiece of Immortal Emperor Jin Tai and Emperor of the Underworld by Qi. Xianxia had seen the situation inside when he came, but that was not what he wanted to care about. At this moment the distance between the two sides was less than 10 meters. The corner of Xianxia's mouth curled up into a cold smile. He slowly raised the divine sword in his hand. With the sharpness of the divine sword he was confident that he could kill Yan Zhuixing in one move. Just as Yan Zhuixing was about to use the magic blade to break the light barrier, there was a sudden explosion behind him. It was the kind of explosion that came from something moving at high speed in the water. Moreover, it was very close. Yan Zhuixing did not have the time to react in shock. The magic blade that he used had already disappeared above him like lightning. Boom! With a loud sound, Yan Zhuixing turned around and was immediately hit by a strong impact on the light barrier. However, the moment he turned around he saw with his own eyes the scene of the demonic blade being sent flying by a light golden longsword. This light golden longsword was shocking to him. It was the one that Xianxia had used to injure him last time. It was Xianxia. A thought flashed through Yan Zhuixing's mind. I've fallen into a trap. In a flash, he realized that Xianxia had waited patiently until now to make a move. It was obvious that he had been deliberately waiting for him. In an instant he understood why he could come here safely. Yan Zhuixing was instantly scared out of his wits. He knew that the other party had planned to kill him. Even if he used the blood escape he would not be able to escape from the other party's control in the demon region. What if there was no way to escape? Magic fist. Yan Zhuixing punched the transparent light barrier almost without hesitation. He had no way out now. He was not Xianxia's opponent even if he fought. The only way out was to risk his life and charge into the demonic world. Boom. He easily punched a hole in the transparent light barrier, and Yan Zhuixing rushed in recklessly. However, the moment he rushed in, the long sword that had sent the demonic blade flying quickly stabbed towards him, directly piercing through his chest from his back to his chest. Yan Zhuixing screamed. With a bloody hole in his chest he fell into the light barrier. He clutched his chest and rolled on the ground, appearing to be in extreme pain. The moment he rushed in, the light barrier closed at the same time. Bang! Faster thief! The sound of the collision was accompanied by curses. The invisible Xianxia hit the light barrier and was bounced back. He immediately lifted the bamboo hat on his head and revealed his true appearance. He dashed over and punched the light barrier angrily. However, there was only a muffled sound from the light barrier and a ripple appeared. The force that he exerted was completely offset. Xianxia looked at his own fist in disbelief. He could not imagine that he could not break open something that Yan Zhuixing could smash open with one punch. There was no justice in this world. At this moment, a black shadow flitted by and directly broke through the light barrier. It floated beside Yan Zhuixing who was rolling on the ground. It was the magic blade that was knocked away. Xianxia glanced at it. Without saying a word, he grabbed the flying sword and slashed at the light barrier. However, when the sword hit the light barrier it was like hitting a pile of cotton. Could not break the light barrier at all. Faster thief! I don't believe it. Xianxia was instantly enraged. Yan Zhuixing's men could easily enter and so could the magic blade. Whether it was his cultivation or the divine sword in his hand, they were stronger than the other party, but he just could not enter. This was really absurd. He held the divine sword with both hands and slashed at the light barrier crazily. However, no matter how sharp the divine sword was, it seemed to be unable to do anything to the light barrier. At this moment, Yan Zhuixing, who had a short period of self-healing, slowly climbed up. His chest and back emitted a black aura that wrapped around his wounds and kept healing them. After a while his wounds were healed. The pale Yan Zhuixing raised his head and looked at the almost crazy Xianxia outside. A sneer gradually appeared on his face. Then it turned into a maniacal laughter. He waved his arms high and said, I didn't expect it. I didn't expect it. Yu Qianchou, so what if you tried your best? It's a pity that man proposes but God disposes. God is indeed helping me. The laughter inside was unusually ear-piercing to Yu Qianchou's ears. Yu Qianchou, who was fuming with anger, stopped his useless slashes. He pointed at Yan Zhuixing and shouted, Yan Zhuixing, don't be a coward if you are so capable. Come out and fight me to the death if you are a man. Yan Zhuixing had a mocking expression on his face. He sneered and said, this day will come but not now. When I come out of the demonic world it will be the time of your death. After saying that he turned around and walked towards the sealed cave dwelling in the depths of the stone forest. Stop right there. Yu Qianchou held his sword and shouted angrily, Yan Zhuixing, if you don't come out I will immediately go to Fuxian Island and execute your mother and sister. Yan Zhuixing suddenly stopped and turned around. His expression twitched and he said with a ferocious expression, Yu Qianchou, there is no need to provoke me. I believe you can do it. Go ahead and kill them. One day I will get it back from you with interest. It was as if he wanted to engrave Yu Qianchou's appearance in his mind. His eyes were burning with anger. He stared at Yu Qianchou without moving and slowly retreated into the depths of the stone forest. Bastard! Come out if you have the guts. Yu Qianchou shouted anxiously outside the light barrier. If he opened the passage to the demonic world for Yan Zhuixing, the consequences would be unimaginable. Therefore he raised his sword and slashed randomly. He couldn't figure out which side the demon lord of 10,000 swords was on. The formation that he laid down could actually defend against his own people but not others. After a series of slashes and slashes, there was no effect. In a moment of desperation, a ball of purple fire appeared in his palm and condensed the temperature to the highest. The purple fire palm slapped on the light barrier. This was originally a desperate move because, in his understanding, the power of the divine sword was stronger than the purple fire. However, the strange thing was that after the purple fire palm slapped on the light barrier, the huge light barrier actually trembled. Yu Qianchou couldn't help but let out an eh. He could feel the light barrier slowly thinning where his palm was pressed. In just a short while the fire palm burned a hole in the light barrier, and his palm directly reached in. Yu Qianchou immediately shouted excitedly, Yan Zhuixing. Don't even think of running away today. Chapter 981. When Yan Zhuixing saw this he was shocked. He hurriedly dashed to the cave dwelling in the depths of the stone forest, bit his finger and drew a rune on the iron seal. Don't run. Faster, thief. Yu Qianchou was exasperated. When he came to his senses he realized that the hole was only the size of a palm and he couldn't get in at all. But who would have thought that as soon as he pulled his hand out, the palm-sized hole in the light barrier would immediately close up. It was easy to deal with it now that he knew how to deal with it. Yu Qianchou's body emitted a ball of purple fire, and his whole body stuck to the light shield, wanting to burn a hole and enter directly. Yan Zhuixing looked back and immediately panicked. It would take some time to use the demonic god technique to enter the demonic world from the seal. It was not as fast as Yu Qianchou burning the light shield. He immediately said angrily, Yu Qianchou, don't force me. If you force me, I don't mind opening the passage to the demonic world by force. When the demons wreak havoc in the human world, no one will have a good time. Don't King fool me here. Didn't you come here to open the passage to the demonic world? Yu Qianchou was also burning with anxiety. He raised the temperature of the purple fire to the highest. He was really in a hurry, afraid that Yan Zhuixing would open the passage to the demonic world before he entered. Yu Qianchou, I swear to the demonic god that I definitely did not lie to you. Yan Zhuixing was anxious and he realized that he had drawn the wrong demonic rune on the iron seal. He was so sad that he almost cried. He had to redraw it again, but the god of plagues was chasing him from behind. Where would he find the time? He then continued to explain as he redrew. Yu Qianchou, I don't mind telling you that if I wanted to enter the demonic world before I got the demonic blade, I could only open the seal by force. But it's different now. I have the demonic blade and I can use the demonic god technique to enter the demonic world from the seal without destroying the seal. Don't give me that. Go and lie to your dead grandfather and your dead father. Yu Qianchou blurted out. He didn't even consider whether Yan Zhuixing was telling the truth or not. He just seized the time to destroy the light barrier. Bastard, I'm telling the truth, yet you don't believe me. Yan Zhuixing also cursed out of desperation. His tone seemed to be similar to Yu Qianchou's. He roared, Do you really want to force me to open the seal of the demonic world by force? Hee hee. These tricks are all my leftovers. Looking at you, I guess it will take some time to open the passage to the demon realm. Yu Qianchou's face had already squeezed through the light barrier, and he was smirking evilly. His body was about to enter as well. When Yan Zhuixing saw this, his expression immediately became distorted. Yu Qianchou, don't regret it. You forced me to do this. The roar reverberated endlessly, and the demon blade angrily drew a pentagonal pattern on the hard iron seal. Bloody Finger also drew a pentagonal pattern floating in the air, and a spell was cast on it. The floating pentagonal pattern burst into red light, and it burst onto the iron seal, fusing with the pentagonal pattern on it. Damn it! This guy really pretended to be serious. It can't be true, right? Yu Qianchou's eyes flickered as he watched Yan Zhuixing's actions. He felt that he was about to break through the light barrier. He thought to himself, hurry up, hurry up, hurry up. It doesn't matter if it's true or not. As long as I kill that guy, everything will be over. Yu Qianchou, you will regret your actions today. Yan Zhuixing roared angrily. He turned around and pointed at the center of the pentagonal pattern on the iron seal. He said sternly, the power of the demon god is invincible. Break. The floating demonic blade suddenly burst into red light and crashed into the center of the pentagonal pattern. First there was a burst of dazzling light followed by a boom sound. The accumulated silt at the bottom of the lake floated up. The powerful shock caused Yu Qianchou to stagger. After he steadied himself, he tragically discovered that he had retreated at the wrong time. The light barrier that was about to shatter had actually closed up again. Yan Zhuixing suddenly looked back and saw that Yu Qianchou had retreated. He thought that Yu Qianchou had realized his mistake and turned back. He shook his head with grief and indignation. It's too late. Too late. The iron seal on the cave abode behind him had disappeared without a trace. Inside the cave abode, a black light the size of a fist was slowly rotating and expanding. Yu Qianchou leaned on the light barrier and looked at it dumbfoundedly. He had participated in the Divine Ruin Realm Convention and knew what the expanding black light in the cave abode meant. It meant that the gate to a certain realm had opened. The gate to the demonic realm had opened. Oh my god. Yu Qianchou immediately roared, bastard. What have you done? It's true, why didn't you tell me earlier? Fuck you. I have told you several times. You didn't listen and forced me to do this. Yan Zhuixing roared angrily. Yu Qianchou was taken aback. It seemed that the other party had emphasized it again. However, he was certain that it was not his fault. He immediately roared, with your character, do you think I can believe your words? Then what the fuck do you want me to say to you? Yan Zhuixing roared and turned around. He saw the black light rotating like a dark cloud in the cave abode. The passage to the demonic realm had been completely opened. He immediately watched Yu Qianchou slowly retreat into the rotating black light. He gritted his teeth and said, Yu Qianchou, aren't you known as the #1 expert in the world? Then think of a way to protect the human world. I hope that when I return you will still be alive. At that time I will settle the old and new grudges. As his voice disappeared, Yan Zhuixing's figure also disappeared. He was swallowed by the rotating black light and left the human world that he had lived in regardless of his emotions. The grudges between him and Yu Qianchou had temporarily come to an end. B*****. Yu Qianchou could only watch as Yan Zhuixing left. He angrily punched the light barrier. If he knew this would happen, he would have disregarded everything and chased Yan Zhuixing outside the 1,000-mile lake. There was no need to make things so messy. Just when he was extremely annoyed, he suddenly felt that his punch on the light barrier had caused the entire barrier to shake violently. Yu Qianchou looked at his own fist in shock. Previously, he didn't even have such great power when he used all his strength. How could a casual punch have such great power now? What kind of rubbish construction is this? Could this be a sign that the demons from the demonic realm are coming out? Yu Qianchou clenched the divine sword in his hand tightly and stared at the exit of the demonic realm. Suddenly he couldn't help but exclaim. The exit of the demonic realm didn't have any movements for the time being. Instead, the light barrier that had been shaking violently seemed to be shrinking. Looking at the marks on the ground, he confirmed that he wasn't mistaken. Not only was the light barrier shrinking, but it was also shrinking faster and faster. The area of the huge light barrier was shrinking, but the light was becoming more and more dazzling. In a short moment, It had shrunk into a ball of strong light and condensed at the exit of the demonic realm. Immediately after, the strong light quickly rotated and suppressed the black light at the entrance. Boom! A loud sound burst out from the entrance of the cave. The light suddenly burst out and was so dazzling that Xianxia couldn't open his eyes. After the mountains shaking and the earth calmed down, Xianxia opened his eyes. Without the light from the light barrier, it was pitch black in front of him. With his super eyesight he could only see the mud at the bottom of the lake floating everywhere. It was a blur and he couldn't see the situation in front of him clearly. Xianxia looked around in bewilderment. He put on the bamboo hat behind his head and turned invisible again. He quietly floated towards the exit of the demonic realm. He didn't dare to get too close. He hid behind a rock in the stone forest and watched. He was worried that some expert from the demonic realm would come out. When the floating mud at the bottom of the lake gradually settled down, he finally saw the situation at the entrance of the cave. He was dumbstruck and lifted the bamboo hat on his head again. The floating mud at the bottom of the lake gradually calmed down. Everything in front of him gradually became clear. The swirling black light in the cave abode had disappeared. The seal that Zhou Xian had opened was now sealed by another iron seal with a pattern of patterns. What was going on? It couldn't be an illusion, right? Xianxia flashed to the front of the cave. He held the divine sword and looked around suspiciously. Then he touched the solid iron seal with his own hands. He discovered that the entrance to the demonic realm had been sealed again. It was simply unimaginable. Xianxia felt relieved. However, an even greater doubt arose in his heart. He asked himself what was going on. He walked around the outside of the cave and looked at the light barrier that had disappeared. The place was pitch black. The pearl at the bottom of the lake that had supported the demonic realm for more than 100,000 years had disappeared. He immediately understood. Needless to say, the mastermind behind the demonic realm being sealed again must be the person who laid the light barrier outside the seal. It was the demon monarch of Thousand Swords who had been dead for more than 100,000 years but still exerted his remaining power and influenced the three realms to this day. However, what Xianxia couldn't understand was, could it be that the demon monarch of Thousand Swords knew that someone would open the demonic realm seal more than 100,000 years ago, so he made arrangements in advance? If he really had such divine foresight, how could he have died in the hands of Jin Tai and Bai Qi? What puzzled Xianxia the most was, why could Zhou Xian and his demonic blade easily break into the formation, but he himself couldn't break in even after expending so much effort and energy? Could it be that the demon monarch of Thousand Swords already knew that someone in the human realm could cultivate demonic arts? So he set up this formation to wait for the person who cultivated demonic arts to open the passageway to the demonic realm? Then after the person entered the demonic realm, he sealed the demonic realm again so that the person in the demonic realm couldn't come out? Thinking about it, it seemed that everything was possible, but there were many doubts. However, there was one thing that he vaguely understood. After coming into contact with the light barrier, he vaguely felt that the formation of this light barrier was related to the purple flames in the world. Otherwise, how could the purple flames fuse and break something that even a divine sword couldn't break? There was also the heaven and earth universe formation set up in the eastern Holy Lands. It was also set up using the energy of the purple flames of the world. These two formations were undoubtedly created by the Myriad Swords Demon Lord. It was very obvious that the Myriad Swords Demon Lord had some understanding of how to use the energy of the purple flames of the world. The Heaven and Earth Qiankun array was like this, and so was the array at the entrance of the demon realm. Could it be that the demonic ghost Immortal execution array and the soul-transforming smoke array outside the Immortal ascension stage were also like this? If everything related to the Demon Lord of 10,000 Swords was related to the purple fire energy, then would the release of the divine dragon locked underground also be related to the purple fire energy? If this assumption was true, then the things that happened in these places were more or less related to him, and he just so happened to know how to use the purple flames. Didn't that mean that all the blame was on him? Chapter 982. On second thought, he felt that he was just imagining things. The strange places in the human world were all masterpieces left behind by the Thousand Swords Demon Monarch before he died. They were all targeted at the people of the immortal world and the netherworld, especially the people of the immortal world who had a hint of unwillingness to die. Looking at the divine sword in his hand, he muttered in his heart. Where did the remaining 9,999 divine swords go? It was said that the demon monarch of swords died in this world, so the remaining divine swords should be in this world. Why didn't he leave any trace? Where did he hide them? If he could collect all the remaining divine swords and control them to fight against the enemy, how many people could stop him? That feeling must be very pleasurable. Yu Qianqiu shook his head and smiled bitterly. He felt that he wanted to be the second demon monarch of swords. It was a bit whimsical. He put away the divine sword and looked back at the sealed entrance to the demon world. He didn't know whether Yan Zhuixing's trip to the demon world was a good or bad thing. Would he really come out alive to take revenge as he wished? Even the demon monarch of the demon world couldn't open the seal of the demon world from the inside. Did Yan Zhuixing have that ability? It probably wouldn't be that easy to come out. Otherwise, the seal left by the demon monarch of swords would be worthless. Even if he had that ability, would he, Yan Zhuixing, really open the seal of the demon world and let the heroes of the demon world wreak havoc in the human world? Yu Qianqiu shook his head and denied this idea. From Yan Zhuixing's previous actions, it could be seen that he still had a bottom line. Unless he had no other choice, he wouldn't be willing to let the people of the demon world out easily. After all, his family was still in the human world. Unless he had the ability to lead the heroes of the demon world, opening the seal of the demon world wouldn't benefit him at all. Brother Yan, revenge breeds revenge. When will it end? You'd better die in there. That way everyone will be saved from trouble. Yu Qianqiu looked at the seal of the demon world and murmured. He was too lazy to think about it anymore. In short, even if Yan Zhuixing could come out, it wouldn't happen in a short time. It was a good thing that he was gone. At least the human world didn't have to worry about him for the time being. He then dashed to the surface of the lake quickly. How is she? In Furong's room, Yu Qianqiu looked out of the window for a long time and asked this question. The person he was asking was none other than the Enchantress of 100 Charms that he had always been in a dilemma. Furong, who was behind him, reached out to hold his arm. She shook her head slightly and said, "She doesn't seem to care about what happened that day, but anyone can see that her smile isn't as beautiful as before. What's the point?" Yu Qianqiu shook his head and smiled bitterly. It was unknown whether he was talking about himself or the allure seductress. Furong turned around and looked at him. She bit her lip and pondered for a while. She seemed to be a bit hesitant, but in the end she still couldn't help but ask softly, "Can you tell me about you and her?" At that time I had just stepped into the cultivation world. Perhaps because he had just recalled this point when Hibiscus asked, Yu Qianqiu directly told the story of how he met the enchantress until now with a confused look in his eyes. His tone was a little helpless. After listening, Hibiscus was silent for a moment before saying, "It seems like Sister Yi really likes you." Yu Qianqiu shook his head slightly and said, "In the human world, perhaps I can be considered a relatively successful man. Oftentimes, this kind of man has an irresistible attraction to women. If it was an ordinary worthless man, how many women would fight to be the first to like him? Especially an outstanding woman like her. I hope she can calm down and not be fooled by the illusion in front of her eyes. In the immortal world there are many men stronger than me. Perhaps when she sees them in the immortal world, then everything will pass. It's just a momentary impulse. She gave up her position as the sect master for you." Hibiscus gently reminded him, then asked a rather philosophical question. "Do you have no confidence in yourself or in her? You don't seem to dislike her." These words seemed familiar. He seemed to have heard them in his previous life. Yu Qianqiu turned his head to look at her in surprise. He smiled faintly and said, "It's said that silent people are the best at observing and thinking. I've somewhat underestimated you. No matter what you do, I will never underestimate you." Hibiscus lowered her head and softly muttered. Then she raised her head and said, "You should go see her." Yu Qianqiu hesitated for a moment, then nodded and said, "Let's go together." The reason why he called Hibiscus to go together was because he didn't want to face the temptress alone. However, when he knocked on the door of the temptress's room, he found that there was no need. The women were all in the temptress's room chattering, thinking of ways to make her happy. Seeing that Yu Qianqiu had come, the women looked at him and then at the temptress. After the two of them looked at each other, the temptress was still smiling, but Yu Qianqiu seemed to have a guilty conscience as he smiled and said, "They're all here. Hehe. Then you guys talk, I won't disturb you guys. We want to go out and play." Ziyi had already jumped in front of him and shouted. Yu Qianqiu frowned and said, "Now that the Heartless Palace's people are watching, it might not be convenient for you guys to go out. Wait for a while. It's so uncomfortable to stay in the room every day. So boring." Ze pouted and said. Yu Qianqiu looked at the women and said hesitantly, "Do you want me to teach you guys a fun game?" The women looked at each other, but Ze's eyes lit up and she cheered, "Okay. Wait for me for a while." After saying that, Yu Qianqiu left. After about an hour he came back with a box and walked to the table in the living room. He opened the box and poured out a pile of small purple cubes. The women surrounded him curiously and they all looked confused. They didn't know what it was. Ze reached out and grabbed a handful and said with her eyes wide open, This is made from the bamboo of the purple bamboo forest. You chopped my master's purple bamboo? Yu Qianqiu did go to the South Sea purple bamboo forest to make this thing. He said disapprovingly, "There are so many bamboos and they can't be eaten. What's wrong with chopping one? Why are you being so long-winded? If you don't want to play, then go away." Who said I don't want to play? It's just that when Master finds out, he will definitely scold me. Ze pouted and flipped the things in her hands. She realized that there were all kinds of patterns carved on them. Suddenly she said in surprise, 80,000, 30,000 east. What are these lines? Middle 10,000 south. The women also grabbed a few of them and muttered. There were many patterns that they couldn't say, and they looked at each other in confusion. It seemed like no one could recognize what Yu Qianqiu was making. Wow. Bamboo, it's purple bamboo. I want to eat tender bamboo. Where can I find the tender bamboo of purple bamboo? The wild chicken, who was resting on Wu Lishua's shoulder, heard the bamboo and slowly opened its eyes. When it saw the purple bamboo, its eyes lit up. It jumped up and down on Wu Lishua's shoulder and said, "Shui er, I want to eat the tender bamboo of purple bamboo. This is my favorite food." Ze immediately bared her teeth at the wild chicken. Wu Lishua looked at Yu Qianqiu awkwardly. Yu Qianqiu touched his chin and said, "Wild chicken, how much do you know about this purple bamboo?" The wild chicken's eyes showed that it was thinking like a human. It then shook its head and said, "I have a vague impression of it, but I can't remember. Maybe after I go through another calamity I will remember." "Bad guy, did you get this bamboo? Where did you get it? Take me there. I want to eat it." "Bad guy." Yu Qianqiu sneered and said, "If you remember, then eat it. If you don't remember, then don't eat it." The wild chicken immediately flapped its wings and flew in front of him. It begged, No, I want to eat it. Get lost." Yu Qianqiu waved his hand and pushed it to the side, ignoring its protest and cries. He then waved at the women and said, "This thing is called mahjong. I will teach you how to play it now. You know from 1 to 90,000. You also know the north, south, east, west. This is 1 to 9. This is 1 to 9. Red, fortune, white for short, middle, white." After teaching them how to recognize mahjong, the alluring beauty Yanyu, Furong and Wu Lishua sat at a table. Under Yu Qianqiu's guidance, the four of them rubbed the mahjong tiles and stacked them in front of each of them. After the alluring beauty threw out 2 dice made of purple bamboo, Yu Qianqiu began to tirelessly walk in circles behind the four of them, teaching them how to play and the rules of mahjong, with everyone's comprehension and the guidance of the famous teacher, Yu Qianqiu. After 4 hours, the four of them had already eaten, hit and made up the tiles. They were very familiar with the game. Mahjong was played noisily and the Great Wall was built and destroyed. Yu Qianqiu looked at it a few times with his hands behind his back. After confirming that they had learned it, he then said to the four of them, "I still have something to do. You guys can play slowly. If you want it to be more exciting, you can bring some bets." The four of them were completely focused on playing and didn't have the mood to care about him. They all agreed and some of them even waved their hands, indicating that he should go and do what he needed to do. Yu Qianqiu's expression instantly twitched. He didn't know if teaching them how to play mahjong was a good thing or a bad thing. He shook his head and was about to leave. In the end, Ze, who was excluded from the table, pulled him and complained, "Yu Qianqiu, teach us how to play mahjong for 5 people. It's so boring for me to watch from the side alone. Your mahjong only has 5 people to play." Yu Qianqiu looked at her speechlessly. He waved his hand and said, "Only 4 people can play." He left Ze, who had a face full of resentment, and left. Yanyu wanted to send him off. Unexpectedly, Wu Lishua covered the tiles with both hands and pouted, "Sister Yan, don't peek at the tiles." He probably had a good hand of tiles. Yanyu was startled. She could only sit back down and continue to touch the tiles. The others were completely focused and didn't care about Yu Qianqiu's departure. Bang. Play. Sister Shui airplay. A pheasant's squeal suddenly came from inside the room, startling Yu Qianqiu who was outside. When he came back to his senses he immediately broke out in a cold sweat. He touched his forehead and sighed inwardly. I actually taught Phoenix to play mahjong. What did I do? Chapter 983. In the Divine Ruin Realm, in a huge space under a valley, more than 1,000 people were gathered together. Zhang Peng led Yu Qianqiu through the crowd and introduced as they walked. A total of 1,131 temple-colored spiders have hatched. These little things are indeed very ferocious. But as expected, the first person they see after hatching is like their biological parent. Yu Qianqiu nodded slightly. From time to time he would stop to look at the fist-sized, colorful and hairy spiders that were climbing on his team members' shoulders. When he got a little closer, the little fellows would immediately scream and wave their sharp forelimbs, assuming an attacking stance. They had a strong desire to attack, and their ferocious nature was undoubtedly revealed. The team member that Yu Qianqiu was facing immediately shushed him. The huge spider that had raised its forelimbs on his shoulder obediently lowered its claws unwillingly. This made Yu Qianqiu very satisfied. If he could not control them, there would be no point in raising them. Zhang Ping also had one climbing on his shoulder. He stretched out his hand and hooked his finger at it. The huge spider obediently climbed onto his palm and stopped moving. Yu Qianqiu tilted his head to take a look and said with a smile, "These little fellows are quite cute. Let's give it a try." This was the second time he had come to see the temple-colored spiders after they hatched. The first time was when he had just hatched and was still in the process of getting along with the team members who had tamed them. This time, when he heard that they could listen to simple instructions, he could not wait to broaden his horizons. Zhang Peng walked out of the team and clapped his hands. Immediately, 10 team members came out from the basement opposite him. Each of them dragged out a metal cage which contained the young of 10 types of ferocious beasts, including a python, a scorpion, and a toad. Although they were still small, they were much larger than the tiny temple-colored spiders. The army of heroes had already begun to hunt some ferocious beasts in the ruins of God, so it was naturally not a problem to capture some small things. Even though they were still young, each and every one of them was restlessly rolling around in the cages. Sisi, gua gua, they kept banging against the iron cages. It was as if the nature of ferocious beasts was on full display. Dragging these things out was naturally to let the little colored spiders test their skills. The reason why they did not use the big guys to test them was mainly because they were still small, and they were afraid that they would accidentally die. Zhang Ping gestured to the 10 team members who were pulling the cages. The 10 team members immediately opened the cages and dodged to the side. Almost at the same time when the 10 beasts crawled out of the metal cage, the 1,000 or so team members gave instructions to the temple rainbow spiders on their shoulders. The temple rainbow spiders immediately climbed down from their masters' bodies. In an instant the group of fellows ran out from under everyone's feet. Their 8 long legs were red with excitement as they charged toward the 10 ferocious beasts. The ground trembled slightly like sifting beans. A large group of colorful, furry, long-legged fellows rushed forward without any regard for their lives. This scene caused Yu Qianqiu's scalp to go slightly numb. Just imagine how it would feel if this group of little fellows climbed onto his body. The 10 ferocious beast cubs immediately sensed danger. They stuck out their tongues, raised their pincers, flashed their claws and bared their fangs. All of them roared to intimidate the little fellows that were charging over. It did not seem like this was the first time the little fellows had done something like this. They did not charge forward recklessly. Instead they dispersed with great tacit understanding. They split into 10 groups and surrounded the 10 ferocious beast cubs. They were not in a hurry to attack. Instead they constantly advanced and retreated from all directions to lure the beasts, causing the 10 ferocious beasts to constantly circle in vigilance. It was as though they could not look at each other. The coiled python seemed to be angered by the little colorful spiders. It attacked with its head and bit one of the little colorful spiders that came over to tease it. Just as it attacked, the group of little colorful spiders behind it immediately jumped up and swarmed over, stabbing their 8 sharp claws deep into the python's body. The coiled python immediately let out a tragic cry and quickly rolled around. However, these little fellows were born with iron bones and were not afraid of being hit. After their claws stabbed into the python's body, they refused to let go. Instead they opened their fangs and bit wildly. What was even more terrifying was that the little colorful spider in the python's mouth did not take advantage of the python's opening mouth to scream to escape. Instead, it desperately burrowed into the python's mouth, stabbing its sharp claws continuously into the python's lower jaw. As the python rolled around, it immediately alarmed the other ferocious beasts that were surrounded. Seeing how fierce the little fellows were, they all fled. In particular, the giant scorpion's carapace was extraordinarily hard. It used its two large pincers to open up a path and immediately knocked over many of the little fellows. However, the little fellows had their own methods. They immediately spat out countless spider webs, forming a large net that trapped the escaping giant scorpion. A group of them desperately tried to hold it back, while another group immediately took advantage of the opportunity when the giant scorpion's limbs were tied up to jump up and use their sharp claws to stab it. In just a short while the battle was over. The corpses of the 10 ferocious beasts were covered with little colorful spiders, and their sharp jaws were constantly biting. The entire underground space was filled with the sound of their chewing, sending chills down one's spine. Seeing this scene, Xianxia could not help but click his tongue. No wonder the Ape King said that the Divine Temple rainbow spiders had almost no natural enemies. Once they spread out, it would be a disaster for the other ferocious beast. He did not expect this group of little fellows to be so powerful at such a young age. Zhang Ping pointed at the little colorful spiders and explained, "We are now consciously guiding and training them, instilling in them the awareness to cooperate in battle. I believe they will be of great use in the future. After a period of time when they are slightly bigger, we will bring them along when we hunt ferocious beasts. There might be casualties, but the effect of training them in captivity is probably not as good as the effect of training them in actual combat." As expected of someone who had led troops to war, Xianxia looked at him in admiration and said, "We are not raising them to spin webs to catch mosquitoes in the future. We are raising them to be of great use. Casualties are allowed." "Understood, but there is a problem." Zhang Ping gestured and said, "Master said that these Divine Temple rainbow spiders can grow this big, but how many years will it take for them to grow this big?" Xianxia immediately took out a storage bracelet that he had prepared in advance and handed it to him. "I have already considered this problem. Inside is the myriad beast pill that is commonly used in the celestial world to tame ferocious beasts. Can speed up their growth. However, you have to control the dosage. Each colorful spider can only eat 1 pill per month. If you eat too much, it might cause them to suddenly die." While the two of them were talking, the group of little fellows had already gnawed the 10 ferocious beasts' corpses into piles of white bones. There was not even a speck of meat left on the bones. Moreover, the bones were also full of holes from their claws. Under Zhang Peng's command, the little fellows' respective masters also gave their orders. Immediately they ran back one by one, covered in blood, and climbed onto their master's shoulders. They bared their fangs and brandished their claws, looking very ferocious. Chapter 984. After watching the little colored spiders hunting and killing practice, Xianxia motioned for Zhang Ping to dismiss everyone. Then Zhang Ping led Xianxia on a tour of the newly built underground fortifications. The entire underground fortifications extended in all directions like a majestic underground maze. It was impossible for it to not be big enough to accommodate nearly 10,000 people. If not for Zhang Peng's guidance, Xianxia suspected that he would have gotten lost. Zhang Peng explained the reason why the underground fortifications were built this way along the way, incorporating many concepts of war. First, it was for both offense and defense. It could attack at any time and defend effectively. The second consideration was the comfort of the living quarters. It was not something that could be done in a short amount of time to finish looking at the entire underground fortifications. After glancing at half of it, Xianxia stopped and smiled. "Forget it. Let's just look at this. You must have put a lot of thought into this." "With the earth spell that Master taught me, building this underground fortifications is not a difficult task," Zhang Ping said respectfully. "Master, are you not going to give any suggestions? Disciple's vision is limited and I'm afraid that there might be some slip-ups. I'm at ease with you handling this. I'll leave this place to you." Xianxia waved his hand casually and then frowned. "You have to keep in touch with Elder Nanming of Flaming Mountain. Look for me if there's any trouble." "Disciple understands." Zhang Ping cupped his fists. Xianxia nodded and disappeared before his eyes. After returning to the World Chamber of Commerce, he walked out of one of the rooms on the 22nd floor and saw Wei Chuanqiu, Yun Peng and Deming standing at the foot of the stairs talking. Yu Qianqiu was slightly startled. Deming was someone who would not visit for no reason. She must have come for something. He immediately walked and cupped his fists. What a rare guest. Greetings, Master Deming. Deming had just nodded and was about to speak when he suddenly heard a "paw" sound from the other end of the corridor. It sounded like something hard had been slammed on the table. Then a delicate shout was heard. Bang! Damn it! Who was the one with such a bad hand? Was there a need to shout so loudly when they just touched the tiles? Yu Qianqiu's expression stiffened. Only then did he remember that there were still people around him. He glanced at the three of them and found that they seemed to be used to it. They did not find it strange at all. Clearly, they had been standing there for a while, and this was not the first time they had heard the commotion. Hehe. A few ignorant women, please excuse us. Before Yu Qianqiu could finish his sentence, Ziyi screamed excitedly, "It's burning! It's burning! Little sister Shui, you've lit the cannon. Huh. You don't have any more chips left. It's time for Sister Yanyu to take over." Yu Qianqiu was stunned. Z was going to take over as well? Little Sister Phoenix, it's all your fault. If you didn't tell me to touch it, I wouldn't have been able to light purple clothes cannon. It was Wu Lishue's voice. Sister Shui, I didn't do it on purpose. It was Pheasant's aggrieved voice. Quickly give way. It's Sister Yenyu's turn. It was Ziyi's cheerful voice again, followed by the messy sound of mahjong being played. Then there was the pa-pa-da-da sound of the tiles being put together. The four men listened attentively for a while and looked at each other. Deming frowned and said, "It's burning? What's burning?" Wei Chuanqiu shook her head and said, "I don't think it's burning anything. I heard that they've been burning for a day or two. How could there be so many things for them to burn? Wouldn't they have burned the entire World Commerce Association? Yu Qianqiu, what are they doing? Burned the entire World Commerce Association?" Yu Qianqiu's expression twitched and he said awkwardly, "They're playing mahjong. It's a game for fun." With that, the three of them understood. Wei Chunqiu's eyes lit up and said, "What kind of game is it that they can play for a day or two without stopping? Let's go and take a look." Deming and Yun Peng glanced at each other. The two of them were also curious. With the mentality of gaining knowledge, they followed. Yu Qianqiu stood dumbstruck on the spot for a while before following behind the three of them. When they pushed open the door and entered, they saw four women surrounding a table. In front of each of them was a long strip made up of small purple cubes. They took turns grabbing small cubes from the long strip on the table to replenish themselves. Then they took out a small piece and threw it into the pile of small cubes in the middle of the table. There was also a woman with a pheasant on her shoulder. She was watching intently with her hands behind her back. When the few of them entered, these women actually didn't even bother to raise their heads to see who had entered. This made Wei Chuanqiu and the other two even more curious. They all strolled over to watch. Yu Qianqiu was speechless. He thought to himself, could it be that these women have never played games before? Was there a need to be so focused on playing mahjong? He immediately coughed and said, "Let's stop for a moment. Let's first greet the seniors." When the women looked up, they immediately stood up and bowed. However, they didn't forget to buckle their mahjong tiles in front of them. This action made Yu Qianqiu's eyelids twitch. He coughed again and introduced them to Deming and Yun Peng. As for Wei Chuanqiu, they already knew him. "You don't have to be so polite. You guys continue playing. I'll just watch from the side." Wei Chuanqiu made the decision and gestured for them to stop. Then she walked to the table and picked up a purple cube to see what it was. Unexpectedly, the pheasant on Wu Lishue's shoulder suddenly shouted, "Green bat, put it down. Don't peek at the tiles." Wei Chuanqiu was startled. The pheasant's words seemed to have some effect on him. He immediately buckled the tile back. The Deming looked at the pheasant curiously. He noticed that it wasn't even at the immortal realm, but it could speak the human language. He immediately classified it as a normal beast cultivator because he had never seen a phoenix before. Seeing the women's uneasiness, the Deming lost interest in watching anymore. He immediately said to Yu Qianqiu, "Come out for a moment. I have something to talk to you about." Then the four men walked out. Yu Qianqiu asked while walking, "What business does the Deming wielder have with this junior?" The Deming suddenly stopped and stared at Yu Qianqiu for a moment. Then he said in a deep voice, "I have the Immortal Emperor's decree to find you." Yu Qianqiu cried out in surprise. All kinds of thoughts flashed through his mind. After looking at Yun Peng and Wei Chuanqiu, he saw that their expressions were a bit strange. It was clear that they already knew why the Immortal Emperor was looking for him. He immediately became suspicious and said, "The Immortal Emperor is looking for me? That's impossible. The wielder isn't joking, right?" "It's not a joke." The Deming Lun frowned and said, "I won't say any conventional words. Let's be frank. The Immortal Emperor has decreed that you must compose a song and present it to the Immortal Emperor and Immortal Empress Ji Wu at the wedding ceremony. That's it." Yu Qianqiu's mouth was wide open. After a while he slowly said, "Why? Let me tell you this." The Deming Lun paused and explained, "After the World Commerce Association's Miss Lu was taken away by Immortal Empress Ji Wu, Immortal Empress Ji Wu really liked the songs she played. Later she found out from her that the songs she played were all composed by you. So she asked the Immortal Emperor to let you compose a song that will be passed down for generations to add color to the wedding ceremony. The wedding ceremony is not a child's play. It concerns the Immortal Emperor's face. For this reason the Immortal Emperor personally listened to the Miss Lu play a few songs. He was very satisfied and praised it as the sound of nature. He also praised Immortal Empress Ji Wu for her good taste. After the Immortal Emperor confirmed from the Miss Lu that the songs were all composed by you, he immediately summoned me. That's what happened." "Tsk tisk." Wei Chuanqiu exclaimed and said with a teasing tone, "Yu Qianqiu, I've known you for so long. How come I didn't know you could play such a literary thing? You really can't judge a book by its cover. A guy who uses profanity every time he opens his mouth can actually play the zither and compose songs. He can even get the praise of the immortal world's supreme. Are you going to show us what you've got?" Yun Peng nodded slightly with a surprised look in his eyes. Yu Qianqiu rolled his eyes and ignored him on the spot. He gritted his teeth and said, "Lu Yanqing, you're doing stupid things to harm me again." In fact, he really wronged Lu Yanqing this time. In fact, the real culprit was Immortal Crocodile. Ji Wu found out about it from Immortal Crocodile and then faked it from Lu Yanqing. "Yu Qianqiu, it doesn't matter if you're willing or not. Since the Immortal Emperor has spoken, no one in the immortal world will dare to disobey his will. You have to do it even if you don't want to. Otherwise, think about the consequences yourself." Deming Lun snorted coldly. "If you do it well, the benefits you will get will be unattainable by others. Who doesn't want benefits?" Yu Qianqiu didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "But I don't have the fortune to enjoy it. You want me to make a song that will go down in history? That's a joke. Where did I get that ability?" Seeing that he didn't seem to be lying, the three looked at each other. Deming Lun frowned. Could it be that the Miss Lu was lying? That those songs weren't written by you? You can't joke about this. It's not just about you anymore. If anything happens, even the two of them will be implicated. He pointed at Wei Chuanqiu and Yun Peng. Yu Qianqiu was startled. He said helplessly, "I did it, but I didn't ask her to spread it around." He couldn't say it out loud. If he was dealing with an ordinary person, he could just plagiarize one or two songs from his previous life. But the Immortal Emperor wanted him to make a song that would go down in history. Was there a song that would go down in history in his previous life? Hearing him say this, Deming Lun heaved a sigh of relief and said, "Since it was done by you, then do your best. I'm not forcing you to do it immediately. There's still half a year until the wedding." Then he smiled meaningfully. "This matter will be of great benefit to you. Can't you see it?" "What benefit?" Yu Qianqiu was stunned. Deming Lun said indifferently, "How many people in the immortal world can get the Immortal Emperor's decree to do things? With this decree on you, who would dare to touch you? Plus, the entire Immortal Palace will have to cooperate with you. Isn't this a great benefit?" Yu Qianqiu's eyes suddenly lit up. His expression didn't look awkward at all. He licked his lips and said, "In other words, during this period of time I can do whatever I want in the immortal world?" Deming Lun frowned and said, "Doing whatever you want is a bit too much, but as long as it's not too much." Before he finished speaking, Yu Qianqiu had already rolled up his sleeves and interrupted him arrogantly, "Heartless Palace. Damn it. Help me destroy the Heartless Palace first." Chapter 985. What was the singing of a liberated serf? Yu Qianqiu understood it now. He understood it as a song that could change one's fate. This was a release that had been suppressed for a long time. He had been in the celestial world for such a long time, but he had never gone out. Because he had offended the Heartless Palace, He had been trapped in the hallucinatory immortal city. Today now he suddenly felt that the sky was high and the earth was wide. He could go anywhere and show off his skills again. How wonderful would it be to use the power of the Celestial Palace to get rid of the Heartless Palace? Yun Peng and Wei Chuanqiu looked at each other. Wei Chuanqiu chuckled, "That's a good idea. Let the Celestial Palace get rid of the Heartless Palace first, hee. Deming Luan's expression was already ugly. When he saw Wei Chuanqiu joining in the fun, his expression became even uglier. He glared at him and said in a low voice, "Yu Qianzhou, what kind of sweet dream are you having? Did you forget what I said just now? The Celestial Palace will only help you if it's not too much." Too much? Yu Qianzhou asked Wei Chuanqiu instead. Wei Chuanqiu chuckled and cooperated. "This really is too much. There are so many sects in the celestial world. One less Heartless Palace is nothing. Plus, it's not difficult for the Celestial Palace to get rid of the Heartless Palace." "Yes." Yu Qianzhou immediately followed up. His eyes lit up as he nodded. "That's right. It's not too much. Get rid of the Heartless Palace." He almost applauded Wei Chuanqiu. Deming Luan looked up and down at Yu Qianzhou. He could see that this guy didn't have a chance in the past. Now that he had one, he immediately asked for a sky-high price. He wanted to get rid of the #1 sect in the celestial world. He snorted and sneered. Why is the Heartless Palace so arrogant in the celestial world? Because with his strength he didn't dare to get along well with everyone in the immortal world. If that was the case, the Immortal Emperor would have destroyed them long ago. The sect master of Heartless Palace, Wang Qing, knows very well that the Celestial Emperor wants them to be the vanguard to balance the forces in the celestial world. The Celestial Emperor can't control the celestial world by relying on his subordinates to kill. Killing can only suppress the celestial world temporarily, not forever. Do you understand what I mean? Yu Qianzhou's eyes flickered and he said, "You mean to say that the Immortal Palace can't do many things without a good reason? They're afraid that it will cause conflict, so they let the Heartless Palace be the sucker? It's good that you understand, but your knowledge is still too shallow." The Great Bright Will coldly stared at him and slowly said, "How do you think the Immortal Emperor was able to control the immortal world for so many years? This was the balancing act of a monarch. And it was not something that could be achieved by having a high cultivation and blindly slaughtering. No matter how strong the Immortal Palace is, they can't be the enemy of the entire celestial world forever. Unless the Immortal Emperor kills everyone. In reality, the Heartless Palace has been pushed to the teeth of the storm, and it has many strong enemies. It can only listen to the Immortal Palace. The Immortal Palace can wipe it out right away, and the sects in the celestial world will clap their hands. No one will say that the Immortal Palace is bullying people. If one Heartless Palace falls, the Immortal Palace will support a second Heartless Palace to help the Immortal Palace do things that offend people. I understand. Yu Qianzhou couldn't be happy anymore and he nodded. This is a good method. This way the Immortal Palace only needs to use blood and iron to deal with a small portion of people. This way it won't make too many people dislike them, and it won't be the enemy of the entire celestial world. It can also maintain its deterrence towards the celestial world. So, it's not realistic for the Immortal Palace to wipe out the Heartless Palace for you. Of course. Deming Luan sneered. If you, Yu Qianzhou, have the ability to replace the Heartless Palace in the celestial world, I think the Immortal Emperor might agree to help you wipe out the Heartless Palace and make you the second Heartless Palace. But with the World Commerce Association's current strength, the Immortal Emperor probably won't even consider this request. After all, the charm of a song from you, Yu Qianzhou, isn't enough to mess up his empire. Damn. If I had the power to replace the Heartless Palace, why would I need the Immortal Emperor's help? I would have done it myself. Yu Qianzhou laughed at himself. Wei Chuanqiu snickered. Yun Peng snorted. The human heart is indeed the most sinister. Actually, it doesn't matter to you whether you wipe out the Heartless Palace or not. You've accepted the Immortal Emperor's decree. At least the Heartless Palace won't dare to do anything to you now. Even in the entire celestial world, not many people would dare to do anything to you. Deming Luan said with a hint of ridicule. Yu Qianzhou didn't hold back anymore. Since the Deming Luo was willing to say such things to him, he didn't have anything to hide. He immediately asked, "Then what about after the Immortal Emperor's wedding? Can he still guarantee my safety?" You're really thinking far ahead. Deming Luan couldn't help but say, "If you make the Immortal Emperor happy, no matter who wants to harm you, they will have to consider the Immortal Emperor's emotions. It shouldn't be a problem to guarantee your safety for a year or two. Or, as long as you're brave enough, when the Immortal Emperor gives you a reward, you can talk about the conditions. Ask him to guarantee your safety for the rest of your life. That way no one will dare to touch you in the future. Talk about conditions with the Immortal Emperor. Yu Qianzhou was suspicious and asked, "Is there any use? Has there ever been a successful negotiation before?" De Mingluan paused and said, "Most of them died without a complete corpse. You might be an exception." As soon as he said this, Wei Chuanqiu immediately laughed and Yun Peng also smiled. Only Yu Qianzhou's face turned green and he said in a low voice, "What's the difference between this and asking me to die? Since you can't help me destroy the Heartless Palace, I want something else. Give me a Netherworld token first and we'll talk about the rest later." Everyone was startled and De Mingluan asked strangely, "What do you want a Netherworld token for? With your World Commerce's foundation, do you want to go to the Netherworld to make a fortune? If it's really for money, isn't this a good opportunity to make a fortune? The Immortal Palace can't guarantee anything else, but its wealth is unparalleled in the immortal world." "You've reminded me I want money too." Yu Qianzhou nodded in realization. He would rather eat the wrong thing than let it go. He then changed the topic and explained, "As for the Netherworld token, it's naturally to go to the Netherworld to collect information. Don't you know what collecting information is? It's useless to ask. Didn't the Immortal Emperor want me to make a song that will be passed down for generations? So I want to travel around to broaden my horizons and experience. Only by accumulating enough material can I make a really good song. The Netherworld is naturally an indispensable place for collecting information, so I want a Netherworld token." Collecting information? De Mingluan was startled. Does it mean accumulating information before it explodes? Yes, it means accumulating information before it explodes. Yu Qianzhou clapped his hands and flattered, as expected of the leader of the Commerce Alliance. "You said what I wanted to say with just 4 words. De Mingluan ignored his flattery and said, "If that's the case, then wait for my news. It shouldn't be a big problem." Money. Don't forget there's still money. Collecting information requires money. It's hard to do anything without money. The more the better. Yu Qianzhou quickly shouted. However, De Mingluan had already left, so he didn't know if he heard it or not. "You can do whatever you want in the celestial world now. You can do whatever you want with Jintai's decree." Hehe. Wei Chuanqiu twirled his mustache and laughed. Yun Peng felt bored and left in a flash. Yu Qianzhou seemed to have thought of something and didn't listen to Wei Chuanqiu's joke. He walked around the corridor and suddenly frowned. "Bat King Wei, since De Mingluan received the decree directly from Jintai, do you think this news has spread in the celestial world?" Wei Chuanqiu was startled and said, "It probably hasn't spread out yet. But do you hope it has, or do you hope it hasn't?" "Of course I want it to spread. No, I have to ask someone to help me spread the news." Yu Qianzhou thought for a while and then left excitedly. Wei Chuanqiu was left alone in the corridor. Just as he was about to go back to where he was supposed to go, he suddenly heard a paw sound of something hard hitting the table. Ziyi's extremely wild laughter came. "Touch yourself." "Touch myself?" Wei Chuanqiu's mouth twitched. He sighed and shook his head. The words of girls nowadays are really scary. Although he said that, he couldn't help but feel curious. He slowly walked towards the place where the splashing sound came from. In the hall of the first floor of World Commerce, Yunantian was inexplicably found by Yu Qianzhou's people. "Have you heard any news about me recently?" "Basically no. Only Tsongyun Xen of the Heartless Palace released some harsh words against you. He said that he will tear you into pieces and grind your bones into ashes sooner or later." "Damn. Old bastard, wait and see. Let's not talk about him." "Is there any news that Immortal Emperor Jin personally issued a decree for me to compose a song for the wedding of Immortal Emperor and Immortal Empress Jiwu?" "Immortal Emperor personally issued a decree for you. How is this possible? Where did the Punishment Master hear this from?" "Bullshit. This is not a rumor. This is reliable news. Here's the thing. Just do this for me." The two hid in the corner of the hall and whispered for a while, causing others to look at them from time to time. They didn't know what the two were plotting. In the end, Yunantian happily walked out of World Commerce. No one knew what he was going to do. Actually, what Yu Qianzhou asked him to do was very simple. He just wanted him to spread the news that Immortal Emperor Jin ordered him to compose a song, the kind that had to be widely spread. As for the purpose, it was also very simple. He thought that after being suppressed in the immortal world for too long, it was time for him to hold his head high. It would be a pity if he didn't take advantage of such a good opportunity. However, he was afraid that others didn't know about such a big matter. It would be bad if he was accidentally hurt, so he wanted Yunantian to go out and spread the news. Today he was very patient. He walked around with his hands behind his back for a long time. When Yunantian came back, he hurriedly went up and asked, "Has the news been spread?" The news spread very fast. It has already started to reach my ears. Yunantian smiled. Not bad. Not bad. You do your thing. I'm going out for a walk. Yu Qianzhou whistled and walked out of world commerce with his hands behind his back. Looking at his behavior, no one knew what he wanted to do. Chapter 986. The mountain spring flowed down the waterfall. Under the impact of the water, the 4 words World Commerce Association were still majestic and showed the vitality of the World Commerce Association. The creator of these 4 words was standing on top of the waterfall with his hands behind his back, enjoying the bright sunlight and breathing in the free air. The waterfall flows down 3,000 feet like the Milky Way falling from the 9 heavens. Good poem, good poem. The poetic Yu Qianzhou couldn't help but praise himself. He glanced at the 4 people staring at him from the sky. From their clothes, they were still disciples of Heartless Palace. He couldn't help but mutter in his heart. With the power of Heartless Palace, it was impossible that they hadn't received the news. This Qing Yun Xin was probably still verifying the credibility of the news. Otherwise, he wouldn't dare to send people to watch him after he knew that he was working for the Immortal Emperor. F***CKU. Who's afraid of who? I'm the Imperial Envoy now. A stream of light shot out from the waterfall and flew directly towards the central plaza of Hallucination Immortal City. The sea of clouds was vast and mighty, tens of thousands of mountains stood in the middle, and all kinds of streams of light rose and fell, showing the extraordinariness of the most prosperous place in the immortal world. The plaza was bustling, no different from a market in the human world. The human world sold the daily necessities of mortals, while the immortal world sold the daily necessities of immortals. The only difference was that they were on a different level. The extravagant desire of the human heart, whether it was an immortal or immortal, all roads led to the same destination. There were countless stalls on the plaza selling all kinds of things that could be sold. However, the items that were set up here were usually not of a high grade. The truly valuable items were all in the grand buildings at the top of the mountains, but the liveliness of the plaza was far greater than the mountains. It could be seen that whether it was the immortal world or the mortal world, the poor would always be the majority. Those disciples wearing the clothing of the large sects shuttled through the crowd and occasionally stopped at a stall. Regardless of their cultivation, they revealed a condescending aura as they asked the stall owner for the price. Meanwhile, those stall owners bowed and fawned over them, not daring to offend them. Even though they were being careful most of the time, they were met with extremely belittling and disdainful tones from the customers. Even if the customers were to do them the honor of buying 1 or 2 items, don't even think about how generous these customers would be. It was already good enough if they didn't suppress the price. Yu Qianzhou paced back and forth in the vast sea of people. He smiled and looked at the world with his cold eyes. Occasionally, he would raise his head to look at the 4 disciples of Heartless Palace who were protecting him. Even though he'd stayed in the illusory immortal city for a long time, he'd rarely come to this place. He'd only come here once or twice before the World Trading Company was established. Now that he'd relaxed, he finally had the leisure to come out and take a stroll. People who set up stalls in such places were considered to be the lowest rung in the immortal world. Not many people had seen Yu Qianzhou before. Even if they had seen him once or twice with how he, Yu Qianzhou, dressed in an unusually low-key manner, who would have seen a sect master with a storage pouch on his waist? In addition to his ordinary appearance, there was nothing special about him when he was thrown into a crowd. If they weren't familiar with him and didn't look at him face to face, they probably wouldn't be able to recognize that he was the sect master of the World Trading Company, Yu Qianzhou. Most people's gazes only flashed past his face and didn't linger. Because of this, his mood became more relaxed as he strolled. In reality, he quite liked to stroll around aimlessly like this. There was no restraint of entering a room, no effort of scheming. Looking at the hundreds of people, they saw him as nothing more than an ordinary idler. Along the way, he could hear many people talking about him. They were all talking about the matters that the immortal emperor had personally decreed for him to do. Yu Qianzhou ignored them and strolled with a faint smile on his lips. As he walked, he was suddenly attracted by a refreshing fragrance. He took a deep breath and felt his spirits lift. He looked around and didn't know where the fragrance was coming from. This kind of fragrance was very attractive to him. He wondered who was selling fragrant things. It wouldn't be a bad idea to buy some and put it in his room. He cupped his hands and asked a man who was walking towards him, "May I ask this friend, where can I find something with this kind of strange fragrance?" He pointed around and then at his own nose. The man was startled. He took a few more deep breaths, but he didn't smell any fragrance. Instead, he smelled the body odors of all kinds of people passing by. He frowned and said, "Where is this fragrance coming from?" He waved his sleeves and left, treating him as a lunatic. Yu Qianzhou was startled. He couldn't smell such a special fragrance. There must be something wrong with his nose. He then asked a few passers-by, but the answers he got were more or less the same. No one smelled any fragrance. Yu Qianzhou couldn't help but be startled in the crowd. He touched his nose and asked himself, could it be that there was something wrong with his nose? But he felt that it wasn't right. If there was something wrong with his nose, he shouldn't be able to smell anything. If that was the case, his nose was unusually sensitive. I'll find it myself. Yu Qianzhou took 2 deep breaths. Then, like a hunting dog, he sniffed the air with his nose and moved around the crowd, following the fragrance. The area of the square was not small, so he spent a lot of time looking for it. The 4 heartless palace disciples in the air looked at each other. They didn't know why he was wandering around like a headless fly. At the edge of the square, the crowd gradually thinned. Yu Qianzhou swayed out from the crowd and sniffed in front of him. He was stunned. Below the cliff in front of him was an old tree with a crooked neck. Its old roots were deeply rooted in the crevices of the cliff. Its lush green leaves extended out like a giant parasol. A white sail was hanging from the branches, swaying in the wind. Huang Xiaolong couldn't see what was written on it. Under the shade of the tree there were 2 tables and stools. A slightly hunched old man with white hair and a little girl around 13 or 14 years old were serving bowls of food to the customers. There weren't many customers. One of the tables was empty, while the other only had a single customer. Yu Qianzhou's nose twitched again, sniffing again. After confirming that the fragrance came from that stall, he was speechless. He thought it was selling something, but it was actually food. Shaking his head, Huang Xiaolong slowly walked over. When he reached the bottom of the tree, he saw the words written on the white sail. Green clear, 1 divine grade spirit stone per bowl. What kind of thing was green clear, selling a bowl for 1 divine grade spirit stone? Yu Qianzhou turned back to look at the square. There weren't many people who could sell something for 1 divine grade spirit stone, not to mention a bowl of food. No wonder business was so bad. Honored guest, would you like to have a bowl of green clear? An old man in hemp robes walked over, greeting enthusiastically. The old man's face was sagging, his eyes were cloudy, and with a head full of white hair and a slightly hunched back, one look was enough to tell that he was not young. Yu Qianzhou scratched his head, a wry smile on his face. Old man, it's not that I want to criticize you, but the things you sell here are really expensive. Forget it. I came here after smelling your aroma. It can be considered fate. Just take it as taking care of your business. I'd like to try something new. Give me a bowl. Hee. Honored guest, please wait a moment. The hunchbacked old man hurried to his counter. Yu Qianzhou sat on another empty seat, looking at the bustling crowd in front of him. The shade under the tree had a different kind of flavor to it. A short while later, the budding young lady in green robes came over with a yellow wooden bowl, her voice crisp and clear. Honored guest, please enjoy. Inside the bowl was a wooden ladle soup of the same color, and inside the bowl was a lush green jelly that was pleasing to the eye. A refreshing fragrance assaulted his nostrils. Yu Qianzhou's eyes lit up. It was the same fragrance he had smelled earlier. He hoped this fragrance was worth a divine grade spirit stone. Picking up the ladle soup, he scooped up a spoonful of lush green jelly, but when it reached his mouth, he couldn't help exclaiming in surprise. He sniffed twice with his nose and discovered that the refreshing fragrance did not come from this bowl of green clear, but he tilted his head and sniffed at the green-robed young lady who had just turned to leave. He couldn't resist putting down the bowl and sniffing behind the young lady's butt. Smelling like a pig snoring, how could the green-robed young lady not notice? Startled, she spun around, but seeing Huang Xiaolong's lecherous appearance, she retreated in panic. What are you trying to do? Grandfather. She was completely treating him like a pervert, guarding against him. Yu Qianzhou blanked for a second, looking at this young lady's delicate features and fair skin. It was obvious she was a beauty in the making. When she grew up, she would definitely be a beauty. Huang Xiaolong waved his hand awkwardly. Don't misunderstand, don't misunderstand. No matter how much of a pervert he was, he had not fallen to the point of laying his hands on a young lady. The slightly hunchbacked old man also put down the work in his hands, blocking in front of the green-robed young lady, asking solemnly, "Honored guest, why are you doing this?" The customers at the other table snickered, winking at Yu Qianzhou as if they were kindred spirits. Yu Qianzhou couldn't be bothered with him. He cupped his hands at the grandfather-granddaughter pair. "I'm really ashamed, please don't misunderstand. It was because I smelled a sweet fragrance, that's why I followed it here. I thought it was the fragrance from the bowl, but when I picked up the bowl just now, I realized that the fragrance came from this young lady, so I couldn't help but sniff a few times. My apologies for being abrupt, please don't misunderstand." After saying that, he obediently returned to his seat. The hunchbacked old man's eyes suddenly flashed with a bright light. He sized up Yu Qianzhou with a meaningful gaze, then turned to the green-robed young lady and chuckled. Don't be nervous, it's just a misunderstanding." The customer at the other table suddenly picked up his bowl and sat next to Yu Qianzhou, smiling as he transmitted his voice. "Brother really has a good eye. The excuse of smelling a beauty is not bad, but there's a first-come, first-served rule for everything. I saw this little beauty first. I'm Wangu Tong's disciple, my apologies." Yu Qianzhou glanced at the person's robe but didn't say anything. He scooped up a spoonful of the green liquid and put it into his mouth. As a result, it melted in his mouth, turning into a refreshing liquid that flowed into his stomach. At the same time, his mouth was filled with a natural sweetness that lingered in the aftertaste. The taste was indeed not bad. He picked up a few spoonfuls of the green liquid and slowly savored the aftertaste. Seeing that Yu Qianzhou was ignoring him, the person at the side was about to flare up. But he noticed that he couldn't see through Yu Qianzhou's cultivation, so he swallowed his anger and slapped the table. "Bill." The green-robed young lady ran over, clasping her hands excitedly. Her sweet voice sounded, "1 piece of divine-grade spirit stone." It was as if she had never seen money before. Chapter 987. Yu Qianzhou agreed with Huang Xiaolong's reasoning. Although the taste of this green clear wasn't bad, a simple stall selling food for a piece of divine-grade spirit stone was indeed a little too expensive. Most likely no one would patronize this stall. Thus, it was understandable that this little girl was excited when she heard that he was going to pay. What? A bowl of food like this is worth a piece of divine-grade spirit stone? That person's eyebrows rose as he slammed the table, barking, "Aren't you trying to scam me? I'm Wangu Tong's disciple, how dare you scam me? Are you tired of living?" Watching the bowl in front of him bouncing from the slap, Yu Qianzhou shot a cold glance over. He wanted to see what kind of method this guy was going to use to get his hands on this lass. The lass in green looked at her grandfather behind her in a fluster, not knowing how to deal with this situation. The hunchbacked old man quickly walked over, pointing at the white sail hanging on the tree with a smile. "Honored customer, this is a business with a clear price. I would not dare to scam people." "Not dare to scam people? Does that mean you're scamming people on purpose?" That person sneered. "Old thing, you really have guts, daring to scam our Wangu Tong." The hunchbacked old man frowned, then sighed. Forget it, it can be considered fate that an honored customer could visit my stall. This bowl of green clear is a free gift." "Honored customer, please go ahead, Lu." It was obvious that he didn't want to cause trouble. The lass called Lu pouted, feeling wronged. Her hand reached out to collect the bowl and spoon on the table, but who knew that her hand would be caught by that person? "Little girl, you don't look too happy. Are you giving me a hard time?" That person's hands rubbed the pair of soft hands with a lascivious smile on his face. The lass in green panicked, crying out, "Grandfather!" She didn't know what to do. Damn it. Disappointing. Yu Qianzhou didn't expect to run into such a situation when he went out to eat. This world was really ruled by evil people. Without a second thought, a kick flew out from under the table, landing on that person's foot. The person lost his balance and fell onto the table. Yu Qianzhou didn't say anything else, and with a "hoo," he punched him in the face. Bang! That person was sent flying several meters away. Blood spurted out from his mouth and nose in the air. The sudden turn of events scared the little girl so much that she shrank into the arms of the hunchbacked old man. She looked at the customer who committed the crime. He was sitting there quietly, eating the green clear in his bowl as if nothing had happened. The hunchbacked old man patted the little girl in his arms and said, "It's okay, it's okay." He looked at Xianxia and shook his head. The commotion immediately attracted the attention of the people on the square. Seeing that someone actually dared to beat someone up in the hallucinatory Immortal city, especially when they saw that the person who was beaten up was Wan Gutong's disciple, a commotion broke out. The 4 disciples of the Heartless Palace who were watching him looked at each other. The person who was knocked unconscious shook his head and quickly got up. He wiped the blood from his nose and mouth. He didn't expect to be beaten up in the hallucinatory Immortal city. He pointed at Xianxia and roared, "Who are you? How dare you attack me, Wan Gutong?" He really wanted to rush up and take revenge, but he didn't have the guts to break the hallucinatory Immortal city's rules. You alone can't represent Wan Gutong. Since you ate someone else's food, you should pay up honestly. Don't embarrass Wan Gutong. Xianxia tilted his head to look at the person. In reality, he was also restricted by the hallucinatory Immortal city's rules. Otherwise, he would have taken the person's life on the spot. Don't count on this kind of person to turn over a new leaf. Leaving him alive would be a disaster, so killing him was the best solution. However, with this tilt of his head under everyone's watchful eyes, many people recognized him and whispered to each other, "So it's you, Xianxia." As the words Xianxia spread, the disciple who was beaten stiffened. Even though he had never seen Xianxia before, he knew that Xianxia had close ties with many of Wan Gutong's higher-ups. Especially Elder Wan Gutong, who was in charge of this place. He called Xianxia brother. Even Wan Bushing's precious granddaughter Wan Ling had frequent dealings with Xianxia. The two of them had even held hands in the godly ruins realm. This was something that many people had seen with their own eyes. This guy took a beating for nothing. Many people in the crowd laughed out loud. That Wan Gutong disciple rubbed the place where he was beaten, his eyes filled with resentment as he glared at Xianxia, but he dared not utter a word, turning around to leave with his tail between his legs. Who would have thought that Xianxia would harumph coldly? "Leave the money for the food to the boss before you leave. Don't tell me your Wan Gutong has the habit of eating and dashing?" The resentment in that disciple's eyes deepened, but after rummaging through his storage bracelet, he discovered that there was still a gap to the amount of 1 divine-grade spirit stone. In truth, no matter which sect it was, to the higher-ups, a few 100 million or even a few billion divine-grade spirit stones were nothing, but to the disciples 1 divine-grade spirit stone was not a small amount. After a brief moment of awkwardness, that disciple cupped his fists at Xianxia. "I hope, sect master, you can be magnanimous. Allow me to go back and retrieve the money." Xianxia turned around, silently eating his food by the spoonful, ignoring that disciple, letting him do as he saw fit. The hunchbacked old man smiled at that disciple. It's fine, 1 bowl of food, it's free, no charge." That disciple looked at Xianxia, gritting his teeth, and flew away without a word. As the saying goes, good news never goes out, but bad news travels 1,000 li. While the crowd was watching Xianxia slowly eating his food, whispers and whispers could be heard. Several lights flickered in the air. The Wan Gutong disciple who had just run away was dragged back by someone. The person in the lead was none other than the Wan Gutong elder overseeing this place, Wan Gi. Seeing Xianxia, Wan Gi broke out in laughter. "Sect master, you is indeed in a good mood, actually hiding here to enjoy delicious food." "It's not really in a good mood, just stealing half a day of leisure." Xianxia also laughed heartily as if nothing had happened between the two of them. Wan Gi walked up to Xianxia, noticing the oily green stuff in his bowl. He clicked his tongue in surprise. "What is this stuff? How come I've never seen it before?" Then he waved his hand at the grandfather and grandson. "Come, give me a bowl too." He sat down opposite Xianxia. When the bowl of green clear food was placed on the table, Wan Gi took a small sip and nodded. "It really has a unique flavor." Then he put down the spoon in his hand, ready to get down to business. He looked at Xianxia with a wide smile. "I wonder what my sect's disciple did to offend you, making you great sect master. You personally make a move. I've already brought the person here, have him apologize to you." Both of them were smart people. It was easy to understand the meaning behind Wan Gi's words. On the surface, Wan Gi said he was here to apologize, but in reality he was here to ask, You injured my Wangu Tong's disciple just for a piece of divine-grade treasure? Aren't you not giving my Wangu Tong face? Wangi also understood that he couldn't do anything to Yu Qianchou, but as the sect master overseeing this place, if he didn't say anything when his disciple was beaten up, he would lose face. He also believed that Yu Qianchou was not an idiot. He would at least give him some face and let him step down. Who would have thought that Yu Qianchou would tilt his head to look at the disciple, nonchalantly saying, "There's no need for an apology. In my opinion, this kind of shameless disciple is a scourge if you keep him around, and it's also a disgrace to you, Wangu Tong. Why don't you just kill him and end all troubles once and for all?" The moment Wangi said that, the disciple panicked, looking nervously at Wangi. Wangi's face tightened slightly, his voice solemn. "Sect Master Yu's words, I don't understand." "Then why don't you ask him what he did?" Yu Qianchou harumphed coldly, snickering coldly as he said, "The food is clearly priced. You can choose not to eat it if you don't have money. It's not like it's something you can't live without. It doesn't matter if you don't have money to eat it. With your face as Elder One overseeing this place, I'll pay for it on his behalf without him even asking." What's more hateful is that he actually accused Wangi of swindling people, saying that Wangi's guts aren't small, daring to swindle Wangu Tong's people, using this as a pretext to grope the little girl in front of everyone, and even treating this old man like he's the same kind of trash. This is intolerable. Luckily this happened in the hallucinatory Immortal City, otherwise this old man would have killed him on the spot. "So that's how it is." The surrounding crowd hissed. Wangi tilted his head, glaring coldly at the disciple, barking, "Is Sect Master Yu's words true?" "I." The disciple stuttered with fear, stammering. Wangi sneered, "You really dare to give our Wangu Tong face, cripple his cultivation and request the sect master to expel him from the sect." Being the overseer of this place, he had the authority to enforce the law, but he didn't have the authority to expel a disciple from the sect. "I know I was wrong, Elder, spare me, ah." A miserable shriek rang out, the disciple wilted on the spot. His dantian was shattered by an expert from the same sect, his cultivation was crippled, and he was carried away by the other sect master. In the immortal world, this was merely the tragic end of a small fry that couldn't even cause a ripple. To those big shots, for the sake of their own reputation or the reputation of their organization or for other reasons, the lives of small fries were nothing more than something they could casually take, not worth mentioning. However, it was enough to make those small fries tremble with fear, thinking that Wangu Tong was strict in enforcing the law, but in truth, there were countless disciples like this in the big sections. That disciple was just unlucky enough to run into Yu Qianchou's hands. The little girl in green who was hiding behind her grandfather would occasionally poke her head out to look at Yu Qianchou, her eyes brimming with curiosity. Wangi waved his hand, the other disciples immediately turned into streaks of light and left. With a wave of his hand, this matter was over. Wangi then asked curiously, "Sect Master Yu, I heard that the Immortal Emperor personally sent a decree to you. I wonder if it's true?" The people who were watching the commotion all perked up their ears. "It's just a rumor." Yu Qianchou waved his hand humbly. At this time 3 more golden streaks of light appeared. The one in the lead was the Great Bright Wheel. Yu Qianchou and Wangi immediately stood up, bowing respectfully, "Greetings to the Great Bright Wheel Master." The surroundings instantly fell into silence. The Great Bright Wheel snorted coldly, "Yu Qianchou, you really have guts, actually daring to hit people in my hallucinatory Immortal City." Just when everyone was thinking that Yu Qianchou was going to be out of luck, the Great Bright Wheel's hand behind the Great Bright Wheel's back dropped, slapping 2 items onto the table, saying indifferently, "I've already brought the items you wanted. Today, on account of the Immortal Emperor, I won't argue with you, but if there's a next time, I won't let you off so easily."